Hello friends. Welcome to the Fiction Quest. How are you all? So in this video, we will see what if Naruto had Venom's bloodline. But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. Venom of Konoha. Naruto snickered to himself as he reached for the forbidden scroll. He had no idea it would be this easy. He failed to realize that no other genin could have pulled this off, as he had far more stealth than was average. After all, running and hiding from villagers who want to kill you will do that. Then running and hiding from shinobi and kunoichi SP who want to catch you for some prank will also increase your natural stealth and speed. It also helped to have a traitorous chunin place several genjutsu on the guards. He was about to grab the scroll when the door began to open behind him. He naturally panicked. He grabbed the scroll and bolted for the window. He didn't have to worry about the Hokage. Sexy no jutsu had taken care of him. He leapt out the window and was on his way. Naruto sat down, the forbidden scroll in his lap. He smiled as he let it unroll the whole way down. He failed to notice the glass vial that rolled out of the bottom of the scroll and ended up at the base of a nearby tree. He quickly mastered Kage Bushin no jutsu. He jumped when someone yelled at him. Naruto, what do you think you're doing? Naruto smiled wide. Ha ha, Iruka-sensei, I guess I found you. Yeah. Wait, what the hell? I found you, idiot. Naruto kept smiling. Oh, I guess you did. Anyway, I guess I can be a genin now, huh? Iruka frowned. Something wasn't right here. What are you talking about, Naruto? Mizuki-sensei told me if I got the forbidden scroll and learned one technique, I would be able to become a genin. Iruka's eyes widened. He barely sensed something. He dived forward, tackling Naruto to the ground as an oversized shuriken slashed through the space he had just occupied. Ah, Iruka, why did you save the demon brat, huh? Oh well, I'll just kill you both and take the scroll. What, you're the traitor? Why did you bring Naruto into this? Felt like it. Mizuki grinned as he produced yet another large shuriken and threw it at Naruto. Naruto kept his eyes open. It won't end like this, it can't end like this, I'm gonna be Hokage. He cried out in defiance as the weapon approached. Suddenly something blurred in front of his vision. He heard a grunt and a warm sticky substance splattered onto his forehead and left cheek. He looked up and was utterly shocked to see Iruka's smiling face looking down at him. Run, Naruto. Run now, please, he whispered. Naruto shook his head as he stood and quickly moved around Iruka, noticing the shuriken in his father figure's back. He growled and looked at Mizuki. You heard Iruka-sensei again and I'll kill you. The traitor just laughed. Naruto yelled a battle cry and he charged. As he neared, Mizuki just backhanded him hard. He slammed back first into a tree. He dropped to the ground and thought he heard glass break. He ignored it as he suddenly remembered the technique he had learned. He made a single seal and gathered his chakra. Both Mizuki and Iruka looked in his direction as he called out a technique. Iruka looked on with awe. Mizuki would have shit himself, but he was too scared even for that. Let's just say the results were unpleasant. Iruka smiled. He called Naruto over to him. Okay, close your eyes. He chuckled at Naruto's shocked expression to realize that the forehead protector he was now wearing was Iruka's. Iruka laughed out loud as Naruto tackled him in a hug. The kid was really something. Neither noticed the last tendrils of a black substance that was absorbed into some exposed skin on his back. Naruto stumbled into his apartment. He must have been more tired than he thought. After talking with the Hokage, going over everything, his excitement at becoming a genin had made him forget hearing glass break in the forest. He groaned as his stomach rolled over. Only then did he realize how much he was sweating. He began to strip, preparing for bed. He was down to his boxers when he cried out in pain, and fell to the floor, curling up, shivering, sweating profusely. Soon unconsciousness claimed him. Naruto's mindscape, with a little something extra added. Naruto woke up surrounded by water. He looked around. It appeared he was in a sewer. He looked around as one thought ran through his mind. What the hell? He suddenly registered that he could hear faint voices that sounded like they were arguing. He followed the voices until he came across a steel door. The voices were louder but still muffled. He slowly opened the door, silently sending up a prayer of thanks to whoever watches over midgets everywhere that the door didn't make a sound as it opened. He could suddenly hear the voices. They were shouting. I'll tell you one more time, you slimy fucker. This is my vessel, get the hell out, yelled out the first voice. It was deep, booming and intimidating. The second voice sounded almost like two different people were speaking in unison. It had a deep growling quality but also had a human voice that was pitched slightly higher than normal. The overall effect was of something menacing and dangerous, something that lurks in the shadows. It's not my fault you're in here, and if I leave now I'm dead, so go fuck yourself, furball. Look at it this way, now he's even better. The booming voice retorted. I don't care, get the hell. Oh shit, he's here. Naruto grinned slightly. The argument had been way over his head, and the language had been appalling to his young mind. He only used hell, damn and crap, but it seems they sounded embarrassed at being caught in the act. He entered the room and gasped. No one was there. There were a massive set of bars set into a wall like a cage, and here and there in the corners and across the bars of the cage were large black wires. Naruto shook his head and dismissed the thought they looked like massive spider webs. He cried out and fell on his butt right into a puddle as a massive pair of glowing red eyes appeared behind the bars. Slowly a form came into being of a massive red fox with rabbit ears and 9 swishing tails. KKK Kyuubi, you're dead. No kid, I'm surprised one of those bastard villagers didn't tell you. The 4TTH sealed me inside of you, he couldn't kill me, no mere human can. Kyuubi waited for his container's outburst. What happened next surprised him greatly. Oh well, that explains a lot. I'm not letting you out. Kyuubi's jaw hit the floor. He hadn't been expecting that. As he recovered, Naruto asked another question. Whose was the other voice? Kyuubi flinched and began to mutter to himself. Naruto's head whipped round as he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. He gasped as the cobwebs on the wall gathered together and a man stepped out. He was tall. He had blonde hair and had stubble on his cheeks and jaw. He smiled at Naruto. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt, scuffed jeans and black sneakers. He began to speak. Hello Naruto. You've met Kyuubi or Furball. Naruto snickered at this while said Furball growled. This form you see here is merely a remnant of my last human host. A man named Eddie Brock. He managed to get me back from a man named Mac Dragon who had for a time been my host. Eddie died of extreme old age due to the fact he bonded with me completely. He lived for almost 500 years. We did much good in the world fighting evil where we found it protecting the innocent. Naruto nodded and smiled at the man. He didn't entirely get what he had said, but he was obviously a hero of some sort. Naruto, do you understand that this form I'm speaking to you in isn't what I am? This is, with that he gestured to the black substance he had come from. Naruto's jaw dropped. The man continued. I have entered your body. I am a symbiote. Do you understand this word? Naruto shook his head in a definite no. The man sighed. I am a being that can no survive by itself. I can only survive in either a chosen host. You are a specially made container which you broke, leading me to enter you. Kyuubi added his 2 cents. Filthy parasite. I am not a parasite. Ahem. Anyway, a parasite lives in and feeds of the host, eventually destroying or harming it. This is what my race used to do until they were destroyed by, a really evil guy. For those of you who don't know, Venom actually killed every single symbiote on the symbiote planet. I am a symbiote. What a symbiote does is uses its host to survive, but also makes the host far stronger than the average of its kind. You scratch my back, I scratch yours kinda thing. Anyway, if you accept me, we can merge. The entire merging process will take 2 years, but the immediate benefits are well worth the wait. Naruto stood for a few minutes absorbing all this information, which was a lot and slightly difficult to understand. Okay, what do I get out of this? The man went into a classic thinking pose. Superhuman strength, durability, speed, reflexes, flexibility and agility, ability to crawl on walls and ceilings like a spider, make webs like a spider as weapons, shields, etc., ability to shape-shift into other beings for a time, a suit made of my substance which increases all those abilities again, accelerated healing factor, also a slight amount of precognition, which is a split-second warning of danger. The durability will allow you to withstand normal blades, thought special ones that have advanced properties can still hurt and kill us. We are also affected by sound and fire. Both are dangerous to us, but only in the full form. Naruto's expression changed from confused to ecstatic, to worried to even more joyful than made a guy doing one of his speeches while taking ecstasy and on an acid trip, then back to a worried expression. I get fire but sound. Yeah, but don't worry, only really high-pitched sounds are incredibly loud. Sounds like you're standing next to a ringing church bell. What's a church? A temple bell. Oh, okay. During all this the Kyuubi was silent. He already knew what a symbiote can do. After all, you learn quite a few things when you're a 10,000-year-old demon. He was curious about something though. Hey slime ball, I could call you insulting but highly truthful names for all eternity, but what's your name? Oh, it's Venom if you must know. Oh, that reminds me, Naruto, when you use the suit you will be in control at all times. Originally when the host put on the whole face thing, this, he demonstrated by covering himself in the suit and becoming the classic Venom. You would merge with me for that time, and we would talk in the second person, instead of, I will kill you, it would be, we will kill you. However, Eddie overcame that problem. Now it will only happen if you're feeling a strong emotion. Say if you're a little ticked off or annoyed, nothing will happen, you will be you. But if you say go postal or blow a gasket, we merge. Got me so far? Naruto nodded and asked his final question, why was I so jittery and sick before? Oh well, you see, I kinda went ahead and began the merger already, Kyuubi growled. Idiot, he's my host, you didn't ask either of us. Yeah Venom, you could have asked first. Sorry fellas. Naruto sighed. It had been a long night and he could feel consciousness calling. Bye guys, I guess I'll chat with you later so I can learn how to use this stuff. Both nodded in affirmative as he faded from sight. He's smarter than I thought. Both said in unison. They got into an argument about who actually said it. Naruto woke up groggily. He smiled slightly, remembering the previous conversation. He swung his legs out over the edge of the bed and stood up. Correction, tried to stand up. Thud, he landed back on the bed. What the hell? He firmly planted his feet on the floor and stood. He looked around and noticed something was off. Hey, everything seems farther away but I can see it so clearly. What's going on? Hello, is this thing on? Oh hey Naruto, you're probably wondering about the changes. First off, you're a good 15 cms taller, so that's why you fell over. Second, every single one of your senses have improved drastically. Honestly, they have advanced farther than I could take them. Seems my symbiosis is carrying over some of the fox's traits into you. Kinda handy, I guess. All other changes, just look in a mirror. Naruto followed orders and walked into his bathroom. His jaw dropped at what he saw. Part of the reason he wears that massive jumpsuit is to stand out. Also, it's the only thing Konoha shops will sell, the demon brat. Also, it's to hide how thin, scrawny and slightly malnourished he is. He stared at his reflection, and forgive this, I'm not gay. Doesn't mean gay people aren't bad, but the few times I fucked up and read a yaoi fic before I figured it out made me feel really ill, so forgive this part. He was in a word buff. He wasn't massively muscled, but he had a six-pack, and well-defined muscles. He looked good. He then decided to test his other senses. He looked out the window and concentrated. He could see a fly buzzing around a drunk's head. He came back to his normal vision and gasped when he realized said drunk was almost 300 feet away. He listened and could hear all the people talking at once. After the first few painful moments he got his hearing under control. He then tried his sense of smell and realized it was massive. He could smell the ramen stand from his apartment. Oh my, what an interesting development. What's wrong, Venom? I don't really know how to say it. What, am I gonna die or something? Tell me now. Well, this isn't really a problem for you, but for others, mainly women, huh? Foxes, particularly kitsunes, are known to be quite attractive to the opposite sex when in a human form because they release pheromones. Now said pheromones are released all the time and make you attractive to all women, but if you concentrated you could make any woman, no matter how shy and innocent, turn into a freak and jump you right then and there apparently. That's crap, I think. It's Kyuubi laughing. Yeah, something about fangirls. Silence. Silence continues. Crickets chirping. No. Sarutobi's head shot up from his paperwork. Nah, Ibiki isn't working on anyone today and Anko's on a mission, he said with a dismissive wave, getting back to his dreaded paperwork. Yes, the scream was filled with that much fear and future terror and pain. What's wrong with him? You don't want to know, Venom, trust me, okay. While this conversation was going off inside his mind, Naruto was currently curled up in a corner in the fetal position, shaking like someone had tied him to a chair, taped his eyes open and give Guy and Lee a list of reasons that youthfulness is a good thing. Naruto finally quiet whimpering. He stood up and was about to get dressed when a two synchronized, hell no, s voiced in his head. What? Watch. Naruto gasped as he watched the same black substance that the symbiote was made out of extend out of his navel and cover him all over except his face. It began to form into clothes. He ended up with a white long-sleeved shirt, black slightly baggy pants. He had black combat boots and a long ankle-length black trench coat. He somehow knew of a white leaf symbol between his shoulders on the back. He also had black gloves with a white leaf symbol on the back. He barely noticed due to its weightlessness that he was wearing a wide hat. What is this thing? He thought, fingering the brim. Oh, I saw this uniform once in a manga. The hat is called a fedora, also the color scheme is different. Naruto nodded. It was also black. For those of you who know, this is Alucard's clothes from Hellsing the manga. Look it up for reference. His blonde hair was straighter, still spiky at the front, but had somehow tamed itself as it went back and had grown to his shoulders. Naruto smiled wide. He loved it. It was cool yet practical, and since it was made of the symbiote, he was stronger while wearing it. You know what, I'm gonna drop my mask from now on. I'm gonna be the real me. Good idea, said his tenants at the same time. Oh Kit, don't forget the transfer thing. Venom makes you stronger but also adds the natural strength I would give you on top of his additions. So you're stronger than any host of Venom before you. Also about the pheromone thing, do yourself a favor and indulge your more perverted side and flirt with girls. Naruto listened to Kyuubi's advice and nodded. He liked all of it. Oh Naruto, before I forget, added in Venom, my next host will have all the abilities that you have as well as mine. Why? Because it's part of my survival mechanism. I can't help it. I copy your natural abilities, so I won't be copying jutsus, but I will copy the advantages the fox gives you into myself and apply them to my next host. It's why you can crawl on walls. My first host could do that naturally, replied the symbiote. Oh okay, hey Kit. Venom, I have a question. Kyuubi joined into the conversation. What is it, Fuzzball? Grr, could you leave Naruto or have part of yourself leave and copy abilities from some other person? Growled out the demon fox. Yes, that would be simple. A piece of me could enter them for a few minutes and then come back in about an hour afterwards. You'd get the abilities, replied Venom. Kyuubi, are you talking about copying bloodlines? Yep, and I could speed up the process. How? You could say copy the Uchiha's bloodline even though he hasn't activated it yet, and I could use my chakra to advance it to its ultimate level. Whoa, cool, how many could I get? Yelled out Naruto, momentarily forgetting to speak in his mind. All of them, Kit. Wow, whispered out Naruto in an odd voice. He ate a quick meal of instant ramen and headed out the door, tying his forehead protector on as a belt. He ignored the glares as per usual, but he took great pleasure in the looks of shock that greeted him as he made his way to the academy. He smirked as he glanced at his watch, then he gasped. You guessed it, he was late. Iruka sighed. Naruto was late again. Suddenly the door smashed open. Iruka tiredly said, "You're late, Naruto." Only then he noticed the shocked expressions on the students' faces. He turned to the door and barely suppressed a gasp. Naruto was not wearing that orange jumpsuit that screamed, "I'm over here, kill me." He was dressed all in black, with areas of white that strangely contrasted with the rest but also worked well together. Iruka looked over what he was wearing. It looked good, yet it looked intimidating and could, if stealth training was applied, hide the wearer in several environments as long as the wearer was smart. It was then he noticed that Naruto was a good deal taller. Iruka turned back to the class and felt sudden sympathy for Naruto. Several girls in the class, except for Sasuke Uchiha's die-hard fans, had almost hungry looks in their eyes. Iruka shuddered when he thought of the chaos that would be wrought if this change had come earlier in the year. His head snapped up as a loud thud came from the last row of the class. It seemed Hinata had fainted. Iruka chuckled. He wondered if Naruto would pick up on her crush, ever. Naruto snickered quietly to himself at the shocked expressions of the class. Hey Naruto, how did you pass? Asked Shikamaru from the back of the class. Naruto took a last-minute improvised extra credit test that he passed, stated Iruka, saving his students' hide, or so he thought. Kiba's voice rang throughout the class. Hey, what's with the new look, loser? You trying to look cool, huh? And how the hell did you get taller? This statement was punctuated by barks from Akamaru and two simultaneous shouts of, no one's cooler than my Sasuke-kun. I thought since I was actually a ninja now I could drop the stupid act, unlike you Kiba, because you aren't acting. So I got some new clothes which are practical and look good. I also activated my bloodline. I didn't know I had one and I don't know if it started with me. I plan to look it up later to see if I have a clan or something. Kiba's and the rest of the class's jaws dropped. They'd never heard Naruto speak so calmly and composed. Several of the boys and girls snickered or giggled at the fact Kiba hadn't picked up his insult. Only Hinata hadn't been surprised. She was ecstatic. She had known for years that Naruto had been wearing a mask to hide his intelligence and pain. She smiled to herself behind her hand as a thought occurred to her. Maybe Naruto-kun will notice me. No. Naruto soon found a seat. Sakura and Ino had been fighting each other for a seat after shouting in unison. Naruto to their ire took the seat they were fighting for. Naruto move, I want to sit next to Sasuke. No way forhead girl, I'm sitting next to Sasuke. Naruto sighed as Iruka yelled out for them to be quiet. Sakura won the seat next to Naruto while Ino was stuck a row behind. Naruto move, I want to sit there. No. Those who heard were stunned, all knew of the loudmouth's crush on the pink-haired student except a singular girl who thought, yes, I'm on my way to Naruto. None were more stunned than Sakura. No one noticed that the cause of this argument was looking at the loudmouth warily with heavily hidden hope that someone would save him from his fangirls. Wah wah, what? Move it, Naruto. No, and shut up, I'm trying to sleep. Sakura stared open-mouthed, doing a remarkable impression of a goldfish. She was about to speak again when something flashed in the air and her head rocketed backwards, taking her off her chair. The class froze, some wondering what had happened, some thinking that Naruto had hit her. They were stunned when she got up and tried to pull a white web-like substance of her face which was conveniently covering her mouth. Iruka stared open-mouthed. Naruto had definitely caused it, but it was so fast that no one could prove it. Naruto smirked as Sakura gave up trying to pull of the webbing and sat down glaring at him while breathing through her nose. He leaned over towards Sasuke and whispered, "You owe me one." Sasuke gave a barely perceivable nod, facing front, a very light smile on his face. Naruto zoned out while the teams were being called out. His attention came back when his name was called. Team 7 Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. There was a heavily muffled squeal at this, then everyone was surprised when a loud pissed voice said, "Fuck," then a loud thud and a breaking sound was heard. The class soon saw with awe mixed with horror that Naruto had slammed his head into his table, breaking it in half. What the hell was his head made of? Their attention was called forward again when the rest of the teams were called out. No one failed to notice that the front of his hat disappeared before he hit the table. The Junins came and gathered their teams till all that were left was Team 7 and Iruka. Soon Iruka left, asking Naruto to meet him later for ramen. Sakura made her move as soon as their sensei left. She first noticed that the stuff covering her mouth had started to peel. She ripped it off her mouth, wincing at the painful sensation. She then moved menacingly towards Naruto, who was still effectively walling off the grateful Sasuke. She screamed and raised her fist. She swung and met nothing but air. She stared. Naruto had just disappeared. She looked at Sasuke, beginning to go into fangirl mode when she noticed he was staring up. She looked up and gasped. He was on the roof on all fours, sticking on somehow. Sasuke noticed something was wrong, but he couldn't place what, so he dismissed it. He didn't notice that the trench coat wasn't being affected by gravity, it was attached to Naruto's legs. He raised his hands or lowered them depending on your perspective, and something shot out of the top of his wrists, wrapping around Sakura. She was hauled to the roof before she had time to scream. Sasuke suppressed a laugh as Sakura, his most rabid fan girl, was pinned to the roof with some sort of strong sticky rope. The rope conveniently covered her mouth and muffled her screams. Sasuke smirked as he approached Naruto, who had just crawled down the wall and landed softly on the floor. "How do you have this ability?" "Huh. Oh, the webs that are holding Pinky to the roof are part of my bloodline, so is the whole wall crawling thing. But from what I understand, you could learn to walk on walls and roofs using chakra. No idea how, but I've heard you can do it." "Oh, and it's why I'm taller." Sasuke nodded and sat back down, quietly seething that he had such a seeming useful bloodline and that he had activated it. "Don't fret, dude." He looked up at Naruto. "I managed to activate my bloodline while fighting a thief. It's how I passed. Frankly, the council probably passed me cause they want to add another bloodline to Konoha." Sasuke nodded, knowing full well the prestige that went with a bloodline clan. He smiled. The dead last was now a noble dead last, still not on par with the Uchiha clan, but still better than the others. Sasuke was, however, slightly disappointed. The powers were unique and useful. If it had other abilities, it was surely powerful, and only clans as ancient and noble as the Uchiha deserved such power. Only he deserved such power so he could kill his brother. And we all know his sob story, so I ain't going into it. He would get the Sharingan, he would beat Naruto to prove his clan's power. He couldn't care less if Naruto beat others into the dirt, but he would no surpass the last Uchiha. It was impossible. Sasuke scratched at an itch on his ankle, never noticing the slight smile on Naruto's face, not the small hole in his pant leg. A few minutes later he scratched again, and yet again failed to notice what was really going on, or that Naruto's smile widened into a full-blown grin. Naruto woke up from his daze as he sensed someone approaching. He muttered, "He's here," to himself, earning a confused then shocked look from Sasuke as their new sensei opened the door and entered. "Hello. Weren't there supposed to be 3 of you?" Naruto simply pointed up. Kakashi looked up and was taken aback as he saw a girl apparently tied to the roof somehow. Can you bring her down?" "I could, but I'm not going to." Why not?" "I put her up there 2 hours ago. I can make the webbing last for only a couple of hours, though that's improving. She should be down in a few seconds." Suddenly there was a snapping sound and a muffled scream. A mass of pink and white fell from the ceiling. Thud! Sakura managed to untangle herself from the webs and sent a death glare at Naruto, who merely chuckled. Okay, meet me on the roof." With that he exploded in a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Sasuke and Sakura headed for the door. Sasuke paused when he noticed Naruto wasn't with them. He looked over his shoulder and suppressed a jealous growl as Naruto opened a window and crawled out and up the wall. Kakashi was about to begin his personal preparation for talking to the genins, what he'd tell them and what he wouldn't, when he heard a rustle to his left and was surprised to see Naruto crawling up the wall. The position he was in, with his toes and fingertips being the only things touching the wall, looked impossible, but he did it easily. He flipped over the railing, landing lightly, and sat himself down in front of the Junin. He was smiling. "Who did you learn the chakra climbing exercise from?" "No one. That was natural as part of my bloodline. I don't know how to use chakra to climb." Kakashi was shocked. He'd never heard of a bloodline that did that, but he was curious. "What else does it do?" "Well, it makes me like a spider. I can produce webbing, crawl on walls, heal fast. I, however, need to increase my strength, flexibility and speed, as they are integral to the taijutsu style that goes with it." Kakashi nodded his head, secretly happy that he only had to teach him exercises to increase him physically. He didn't seem interested in learning jutsus from him. He smiled under his mask. "Great, less work for me, hee, more time for my porn." His dreams were shattered. "I also like learning new jutsu." Kakashi hung his head in an instant depression. Soon the other 2 arrived, shooting glares at Naruto, who simply waved at them with a cocky grin. "Okay, introduce yourselves," were the first words that their new sensei spoke. Sensei, why don't you go first so we know what to do?" "Okay, my name is Kakashi Hatake. I have dislikes and likes. I have many hobbies and I have a dream." The students all had the same thought. "We only learned his name." "Okay, I'm done. You go, Pinky." Sakura was irritated at the nickname. Her introduction was punctuated with many giggles and glances at Sasuke and a very loud, "I hate Naruto," which earned a chuckle from said blonde. Sasuke introduced himself in his usual "I'm a gay emo Avenger" style. Next was Naruto. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like my friends and ramen. I hate fangirls, emos and Avengers. My hobbies are learning jutsus, training. My dreams are to master my bloodline and become Hokage." The ones listening to this were shocked for 2 different reasons. Firstly, it was delivered in a calm, precise voice, not jumping up and down yelling. Secondly, because of his ambition was rather far-fetched. Good, now I want you to meet me at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning at Training Ground 7 to pass the real genin test." "Real genin test? We already are genin," yelled Sakura. "No, that test just cut out the wannabes. This test is the real one. Out of all who passed, only 9 get to be genin. The rest go back to the academy." "Okay, see you then. Oh, and don't eat breakfast, you'll just throw up." He poofed away, leaving 3 stunned genin hopefuls. Naruto was the first to recover. He stood to leave but was confronted by Sakura. "I got some questions. What the hell did you tie me to the roof with? Why did you do it, and why are you trying to dress cool? Are you trying to look better than Sasuke? Because no one can do that." "The stuff I tied you to the roof with is webbing like spider webs, and it's part of my bloodline. Why I tied you to the roof? I felt like it. I was defending myself as well as Sasuke's virginity." This last comment earned a blush and giggle from Sakura and a horrified look from said pretty boy. "And I'm dressed like this for 2 reasons. 1, I look good in it. 2, I figured I'd get rid of the jumpsuit and dress like an actual ninja." With that he walked away, using the door this time, leaving a pair of stunned teammates. Sakura came out of her trance to ask Sasuke out on a date, but he was already gone. Naruto soon found a secluded training area. He'd ignored the signs saying restricted area 44. He jumped over the 10-foot fence, clearing it by about 40 feet. As he landed on the other side, his clothes appeared to melt back onto his body. The fedora's rim melted, covering his face. The melted mess solidified into a skin-tight uniform which showed his muscles but also had long wire-like protrusions that covered him at random areas. His chest and back showed the same design, a demonic-looking white spider, contrasting against the black. The material on his head formed into a terrifying visage, a black mask with large pure white slanted eyes, combined with a massive mouth filled with large pointed teeth and a long slimy tongue made it something the toughest opponent would find intimidating. He shot out his web, swinging away up into the trees. He shot around, just playing and getting used to the feeling of this new way of transportation. He soon stopped and landed in a clearing. He then noticed his spider sense had activated, as he could sense all the life around him, dangerous or otherwise. He willed the face mask away and sighed as it left his face. There was really no difference. He could breathe and see just like normal with it on, but the breeze on his face was a little refreshing, as he could feel it but not its effects when the mask was up. He walked over to the stream running through the clearing and stared into it. "Hey Kyuubi, is the Sharingan on yet?" "Yep, just add chakra to your eyes." Naruto followed instructions and added chakra to his eyes. He gasped when his normal bright blue eyes turned into a blood red color with 3 comma marks surrounding the pupil. "Whoa, cool, you said it was going to be at maximum, is this it?" "No, say the words Mangekyo Sharingan and concentrate some more." Naruto did so and gasped again when the comma marks blended together and formed a web-like pattern in his eye. He deactivated it and smiled. At first he thought about lording it over everyone and copying all the jutsus he could. He then thought it over. Stealing someone's hard work would be wrong, it just wouldn't be right. He wasn't going to be greedy, he would use it against enemies sparingly and to help him learn jutsus he was being taught easily. He smiled to himself. He had no doubt that was the only real way to learn. He also had no doubt that Sasuke would not follow this path. He would steal all he could to gain more power. He activated it again and called up his battle mask. He smiled to himself when he noticed the only telltale sign was a slight reddish tinge to the large white eyes. He deactivated it and swung back up into the trees. He was heading home. He landed lightly on the other side of the fence. He had deactivated his Venom form, as he called it, before he reached the edge. He was back in his trench coat and fedora. He landed in a crouch, stood up, dusted himself off and walked away from the forest. He failed to notice without the even more enhanced senses that a certain dark-haired white, lavender-eyed genin had seen him come out, but using her Byakugan she had been able to see his battle form just before he had changed out of it. Hinata had no idea what to do. She had followed Naruto to this training area but hadn't seen him go into the forest. She had almost screamed when she saw that thing coming out of the forest, but it had transformed into Naruto. Hinata had to find out what it had done to Naruto. She couldn't let anything happen to him. She leapt out of her hiding spot and followed the creature that looked like Naruto. Naruto sighed as he entered his home. For a few seconds he thought someone had been following him, but the presence had disappeared and he dismissed it. He entered his house and made to throw of his clothes, but they simply melted back into his body. He walked over to his dresser and pulled out some pajamas. He got the pants on when there was a knock on the door. He opened the door and was blasted back as he was hit several times on his arms and legs. He slammed into the opposite wall and landed in a heap. He looked up and gasped. Hinata had attacked him, and boy did she look pissed. What the hell was that for? He yelled out as Hinata advanced on him in an unfamiliar battle stance. What are you, and what did you do with Naruto-kun? What are you talking about? I saw you in the forest. You're some kind of monster. You turned into Naruto-kun. What did you do with him? Her voice rising and becoming more menacing, she was also letting out a large amount of killing intent. Hinata, I am Naruto. That was me, please let me explain. He was actually frightened. Hinata was always timid and shy and kinda weird. This aggressive Hinata was scary, but some part of him enjoyed it. Humph, okay, talk fast or I'll seal more of your chakra points, she ordered, raising her fists again. Okay. That thing you saw was me. It's something I can do. I have another creature inside me which can take on certain appearances. The one you saw is its natural, or battle, body. It makes me stronger and faster, he explained hastily. Hinata looked at him warily. Come on Hinata, it's me. How can I prove it to you? What did you do to Iruka-sensei that knocked him out for a few seconds when you were supposed to do a henge? She asked, still staring at him. He chuckled. That's easy. I used my sexy no jutsu, which turns me into a naked woman and works against perverts. Shame it worked against Iruka-sensei. I thought he was different. Hinata giggled. The gasp, this was Naruto. Her next action at first scared Naruto as she suddenly moved forward, but made him blush when he suddenly realized she was hugging him and he didn't have a shirt. He was broken out of his worries as Hinata's arms wrapped around his shoulders and she buried her face in his chest. He felt her shaking and realized she was crying quietly. He wanted to hug her but couldn't, his arms weren't working. Suddenly the symbiote material covered his arms, then receded and he could move them again. Hinata was still crying quietly into Naruto's chest, not realizing he didn't have a shirt. She gasped when she felt his arms go around her and hold her gently but firmly. "Hinata, why are you crying?" She could hear as well as feel his voice rumble through his chest. I thought you had been hurt, Naruto-kun." "Oh, that's nice. It feels good to know you care." His arms tightened around her and Hinata blushed at his words. Her blush soon covered her entire body as she realized how close they were. "But more importantly, why do you care?" He lifted Hinata of his chest so he could look into her eyes. They both missed each other's closeness and warmth. It's BB because I kinda Lee. She stopped blushing furiously as she couldn't finish her sentence. Naruto frowned as he tried to decipher what she had been trying to say. Suddenly it all clicked. The fainting and nervousness only happened around him. "Hinata, do you like me?" Her head snapped up, looking him right in the eyes. She looked both terrified and hopeful. She nodded very slowly. Hinata wanted to run. Naruto knew her secret. She wanted to just about die when Next spoke. "So you're the one who's always following me? I always thought it was ninjas the old man sent to watch out for me." Hinata hung her head in shame as she nodded again. She gasped when she felt his hand on her chin, lifting her head up. "You know it's cute when you blush." Hinata went a shade of red Naruto had never seen before. She then looked at him and realized she was straddling a shirtless Naruto who had been hugging her for at least 10 minutes. She stared at his muscular chest. Without meaning to, a hand traced random patterns across his skin, making him shiver. She froze when she realized what she had been doing. Her nose started to bleed as many thoughts started to run through her head. It became too much. She fainted. She would have fainted again had she seen that she fell against Naruto, her head in the crook of his neck, her lips pressing against his skin. Naruto at first chuckled when she had stared at his chest, and shivered with a pleasurable feeling when she started to run her fingers along his chest. He smiled knowingly when her nose started to bleed, knowing what it meant. Perverted thoughts. He had gasped when she fainted and fallen against him. Her lips made his skin feel like it was on fire. Her breath made it rise in goosebumps. He was about to lift her of himself when his arms fell limp against his sides. "Hey, what the hell? Enjoy it while it lasts, kid. Hey, what's the big idea? Hey, answer me, damn fox." He realized they weren't answering him. He knew he was stuck until his chakra points opened by themselves again in a few hours. "Ah, what the hell, I'll sleep," he said aloud to no one as Hinata was unconscious. He soon drifted off as he was comfortable against the wall with the soft but warm Hinata against him. He was also comfortably warm thanks to her. Hinata woke up slowly, not wanting to leave the comfortable warmth of her bed. She had been having a nice dream where she had slept on top of Naruto. Her wits flooded back to her as she realized her pillow was a lot harder and warm than it should be and was also moving. She sat up and saw where she was. She fainted. Naruto woke up slowly, the lack of warmth rousing him from his sleep. He slowly woke and rubbed his eyes. Then it hit him. His arms worked again. He sat up and then noticed Hinata sprawled on the floor. She must have woken up, seen the position, and fainted again, he realized. He grabbed her shoulders, kneeling down next to her, and shook her shoulders. Hinata's eyes snapped open and she sat up quickly. Her surroundings came into focus. She was incredibly close to a pair of deep blue eyes that looked quite shocked. Her lips also felt warm. She almost fainted again when she realized her lips were locked with Naruto's. What kept her from fainting was the fact that he didn't pull away and his lips moved against hers. "Na, Naruto-kun is kissing me." Her eyes closed slowly as their lips began to move. Naruto hugged her to his body as they kissed. He wanted to deepen the kiss but refrained. He almost gasped in surprise when her lips parted and her tongue touched his lips. He opened his lips and her tongue tentatively began to explore his mouth, running along his teeth and exploring his mouth. Hinata's tongue poked his own as it still hadn't moved. He moved his tongue against hers, pushing against it. Their tongues began to battle. Naruto eventually won as it was his turn to explore her mouth. Hinata shivered in pleasure as Naruto's tongue explored her mouth. She sighed as they parted for air. Naruto chuckled as Hinata suddenly looked alarmed. It wasn't a doctor dream." He shook his head in a no, and Hinata looked red to pass out. "Hinata, don't faint," he said clearly and loudly, breaking through the haze. Hinata, could you keep the whole creature inside of me a secret? Of course not, Naruto-kun. Hinata was a little worried at his sudden change of expression. It went from a sly look to a concerned look. Hinata, it's almost 4, I think you should go home. Hinata gasped. Her father would be mad at her, but she didn't really care. She'd kissed Naruto. Hinata, could you do me another favor? But it would probably be considered betraying your clan if you do this. What is it, Naruto-kun? Naruto grimaced. Earlier he had no problem doing this to Sasuke, but he was an asshole. Hinata was someone he cared about, some he'd just rather passionately kissed. My symbiote can copy bloodlines, could I maybe copy yours? Hinata frowned. It would be betraying her clan, but her father had disowned her in all but name. What should she care? Do it. Her voice as firm and commanding as it had been when she attacked Naruto, thinking he was some sort of monster. Naruto smiled. He grabbed her arm gently and rolled up her sleeve. He touched her skin with the index finger of his right hand. The tip became shrouded in a black substance that spread onto Hinata's skin, vanished into her. Hinata gasped. It had left slight itchy feeling on her skin. She resisted the urge to gasp. This will take a few minutes. Hinata nodded and sat back, perfectly willing to wait. Naruto-kun, how do you know you can copy bloodlines? Well, my symbiote told me and I kinda did it already. She looked at him questioningly, her confidence greatly boosted by one kiss with Naruto, allowing her to act like a normal person. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. When he opened them, Hinata gasped. He had the Sharingan, which was fully matured. Hinata had been required to learn all about the different clans and clan bloodlines that Konoha had in the past and currently possessed, so she knew what a fully matured Sharingan looked like. She had also seen a drawing of its ultimate level, the Mangekyo Sharingan. Do you have its ultimate level? She gasped again when he smiled and the Sharingan shifted into a spider web pattern. Naruto, that is amazing. He smiled sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. She felt the itchy feeling again as the black substance reappeared on her skin. Naruto reached out and it was reabsorbed into him. How long till you get it? About an hour. I'll show you tomorrow after the test I gotta take with my team. Hinata nodded. She felt like groaning when Naruto stood and held out his hand, helping her up. Naruto, how did you really pass the genin exam? Naruto smiled sheepishly. Well, Mizuki tricked me into stealing the forbidden scroll. I learned a technique of it before Iruka-sensei arrived. I told him what Mizuki told me and then Mizuki turned up, attacked us, and I defeated him with the technique I learned. Hinata smiled. That was exactly Naruto's style, to brag about what he would do, not what he had done. What technique was it, Naruto-kun? Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Hinata gasped. She had heard of that technique. Naruto, that's a Junin level technique. My father mentioned how useful it is, but how difficult it is to use. You have to have a massive amount of chakra to make it practical. Most people could make 2 or 3. How many did you make? About 200 inches, Hinata gasped. Naruto, do you know why it is so useful? Yeah, overwhelm the enemy with numbers. Hinata giggled and blushed as she was making fun of Naruto. Naruto, Kage Bushins can learn things and then pass on that knowledge to you when you cancel them. Hinata giggled again at Naruto's blank expression, then blushed at the wide, genuine, beaming smile he directed at her. He pulled her into a hug and kissed her cheek. Thank you, Hinata-chan, that is so cool. I got to go to the library. But Naruto-kun, the library is closed now. Even better, he replied with a foxy grin that made Hinata blush. Come on, I'll take you home. Hinata followed Naruto out of his apartment. When they reached the street, he swept her up into a bridal carry and leapt to the nearest roof. Hinata marveled at the speed he was carrying her. She blushed when she realized he hadn't changed. When she looked at him, he was back in the same clothes he had before. He saw her confused look and answered. The clothes are made of the symbiote. Hinata nodded and activated her Byakugan and looked at the clothes. She gasped. Naruto paused on a rooftop. What's wrong? The symbiote blocks the Byakugan. I can only see the chakra points on your exposed skin. Naruto smiled. That's cool, means it be next to impossible to use against me, right? Wonder if it works against the Sharingan. Hinata didn't interrupt his musings but rather snuggled closer as he started to move again. They soon arrived at the Hyuga compound. Naruto dropped her off. He was about to leave when she pulled him into another kiss. Naruto parted, panting slightly and blushing furiously, almost the same shade of Naruto. He smiled at her and leapt away in the direction of the library. Hinata had few problems as they had landed a short distance from the gates and the guards hadn't seen her. She walked in and was confronted by her father. She simply lied to him, telling him that she had been training by herself. He bought it as she looked flushed and a little tired. He did however notice that she didn't stutter as much and she wasn't hunched over like usual. He dismissed it. She may have more confidence but she was still weak. Naruto crawled up the wall and through a small window. He contorted himself through the window, his newfound flexibility coming in handy. He landed inside setting of no alarms. He made a single seal and spoke a single sentence. There was suddenly 400 Narutos in the library. Naruto left the library and headed home. One Naruto positioned itself outside as a scout. He would disperse himself if he saw someone coming. This would tell Naruto and the others what was going on and the clones would disperse themselves. Naruto headed home, rather pleased with himself about how much he was going to learn. Sarutobi the third Hokage watched through his crystal ball as the clones read pretty much everything in the library. Naruto had learned the benefit of Kage Bushin from Hinata but the side effects would make him regret it. Sarutobi, unlike every single other person in Konoha, knew about the symbiote and he knew it had found a host when the glass vial containing it had been missing from the Forbidden Scroll. How he knew he had been there when it arrived on this world and had been put in that large vial. Naruto had certainly adapted fast and its abilities were incredible. Naruto felt information come to him as one clone dispersed itself, signaling that the library had been read straight through. He cancelled the rest and groaned. He fell onto his beat holding his head. He soon passed out from information overload. Naruto sat up and groaned. His head was killing him. He sat quietly for a few minutes as his headache subsided. He stood and started to dress, only putting on some underwear and a pair of shorts before willing his clothes into being. He saw the time. He was well over an hour late. He grabbed a few apples of the kitchen counter and ran out the door. He was soon to be seen leaping and crawling and occasionally swinging along the rooftops. Sakura was angry. Sasuke was annoying her and she could have sworn he had mumbled, "Where is that Dobi?" which obviously meant Naruto. Why was Sasuke thinking or even seemingly worried about Naruto? And where was Naruto? He was late for some reason. Sakura heard a rustle to her left. She looked in said direction and gasped. Naruto was flying through the air. His launching point was obviously but impossibly the building in the distance, 400 feet in the distance. He landed in a roll and stopped on his feet, smiling wide. He casually waved and spoke. "Hi guys." Sakura snapped. "Where the hell were you?" Naruto winced at the volume. He now knew to not go into full battle mode near a pist of Sakura. The sound volume would kill him. "I felt ill last night for some reason and it kept me up, so I slept late this morning, sorry." Sakura glared at him and Sasuke nearly. HMPHED. Naruto sat down. 1 hour after Naruto's arrival, Kakashi arrived with a simple, "Yo, you're late," screeched Sakura while the three males winced at the volume. "I got lost on the road of life." Naruto chuckled at the lame excuse while Sakura screeched again, "Liar." Kakashi gave a creepy smile. He pulled out 2 bells on strings and tied them to his belt. "Your objective is to get these bells, 1 each." Sakura noticed what was wrong with this immediately. "But sensei, there are only 2 bells." "Correct, Sakura, that means only 2 of you can pass. Those who get a bell pass the test," explained the Cyclops, his single eye showing obvious amusement. Several thoughts were running through the heads of the 3 potential genin. "They will only slow me down. I must pass. I will pass, Sasuke." "Oh no, if I fail I will be separated from my Sasuke-kun." Sakura. "What kind of bullshit test is, son of a bitch? It's about teamwork," Naruto thought and smiled slightly, earning a curious and wary glance from Kakashi. Has the so-called dead last with a mysterious bloodline figured it out? Kakashi remembered something just as he was about to start the test. "Naruto, did you find anything on your bloodline?" Naruto suddenly opted a sad expression. "Well yeah, it's completely original. No recorded bloodline or even mythical bloodline listed in the library came even close. I'm planning after the test to go to the old man, I mean Hokage, to find out if his private records might have anything. I doubt I'll get a look, but he would probably look for me." Kakashi nodded. He pulled out an alarm clock and set it. "You have 3 hours to complete the test." With that the 3 leapt away. Kakashi sighed. This was probably another team he would fail. The council had suggested that if the team failed he should take Sasuke as an apprentice. He wouldn't do that. He refused to. Those bastard council members had tried to use Obito's death as a reason why he should teach the Uchiha alone. He had almost caved, but he remembered that Obito had prized teamwork above all others. He did however know that once he awoke, his Sharingan team or not, he would have no choice. He was the only one who could teach him. He pulled out the greatest book of all time, or at least to him. Suddenly several shuriken and kunai slammed into his body. He staggered and disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving behind a log. Naruto chuckled. He was in a tree a fair distance away with the Sharingan activated. He hoped he would learn something interesting. Venom had helped by locking away all the information he had absorbed until he had time to learn from it. He smiled to himself when Sasuke used a fire technique and then Kakashi used an earth or Doden SP technique to bury Sasuke up to his neck in the earth. He also saw through the genjutsu he used against Sakura. Kakashi paused for a moment, obviously searching for Naruto. He eventually settled down in an open clearing with his book out once again. Naruto smiled. Now that the others had been cowed, he had a chance of getting them to work with him as a team. He went first for Sasuke. The Uchiha he had a chance of convincing Sakura would only follow the Uchiha. Naruto chuckled at the growling Uchiha. He was a good 20 feet from him but could still hear him growling. "Hey Sasuke, how's it going? Fuck of loser. Oh, that's pleasant, and just when I was going to tell you how to win this little get-together, oh well, goodbye." Naruto started to walk off when he heard a grumbled, "Fine, tell me your plan." Sasuke growled again as Naruto chuckled and turned back. Naruto dug Sasuke out quickly and laid out his plan. "We got to work together, including Sakura. Now I am pretty sure that if we work as a team we will pass even if we don't get the bells. But in case we don't, you and Sakura will get the bells, so you will still pass. Win-win, eh?" Sasuke just grunted and followed Naruto to Sakura. After they woke her, after explaining his plan and ignoring a small rant about Sakura about how Sasuke had come up with the plan and Naruto was an idiot with further contradicting statements that Sasuke could do it by himself, she agreed to only because Sasuke told her to, using her fangirl status against her. Kakashi smiled as he sensed both Sakura and Sasuke approaching him. He frowned. They must have ditched Naruto or just couldn't find him, as he couldn't sense the blonde anywhere. Sasuke and Sakura threw weapons at him, making him dodge with little effort. They soon ran out of projectiles and turned to taijutsu. Sakura's was pathetic textbook academy fighting stance but with no speed or strength. Sasuke's was high genin. The two attacking in tandem gave him a bit of a problem. He had to put his book away. He felt something slap his thigh. He passed it off as a glancing blow. Suddenly the bell rang. He smiled and shushed to the training posts. The others arrived shortly. He missed the smug looks on the genin's faces. "Well, since Sakura and Sasuke actually attacked me and Naruto did nothing, Naruto gets tied to the post." He moved forward to complete said activity when Naruto raised an index finger and twitched it side to side, making an sound. Kakashi raised a questioning eyebrow. His single visible eye widened as far as it could go when Sakura and Sasuke produced bells. He almost dropped his book at one hand touched where they had been. "How?" Naruto smiled and raised his fist, seemingly aiming it at Kakashi. His hand tilted downwards and a long string of white rope shot out of wrist, hitting his book. Naruto shot his elbow backwards, the book snapping out of his hands. He threw the book to Sasuke before Kakashi could blink. "Okay Kakashi, I know what that book is. I ran across its section in the library." He fought back a blush. His clones had been a little too literal in reading everything, and Venom had thought it would be a riot to let those thoughts be absorbed first. "You're a pervert. They passed cause they got the bells. I know this is about teamwork, so we already passed, but just to be sure, if you don't pass us, Sasuke will burn the book." Kakashi looked absolutely horrified. Little did he know that a certain red-eyed kunoichi Junin was recording said incident for further use. He nodded and gasped out, "You pass." Sasuke tossed Naruto the book, who tossed it to his sensei. Kakashi hugged it to his chest, muttering about protecting it from bad men. Kakashi shushed away. Sasuke smirked. "I can't believe that worked." Sakura nodded, absolutely speechless with anger at how perverted and slightly pathetic her sensei was. Kakashi sighed. His book was safe, he grumbled when he saw a guy walking in his direction. He thought he smelt something burning. He flipped open his book for comfort and solace. He gasped, an explosive note. Boom. "No, I'll kill you Naruto." Sasuke looked at Naruto, who was smiling wide. "You didn't." Naruto chuckled, which broke out into full-blown laughter. "You bet I did." Sasuke sighed. He hoped his teammate survived their sensei's revenge. Meanwhile, a certain purple-haired snake using but hating kunoichi smiled as she watched Kakashi's book blow up in his face. He fell to the ground sobbing, then screamed out who he was going to get his revenge on. Anko smiled. She definitely liked Naruto's style. The container certainly had balls blowing up Kakashi's prized Ika Ika book. Naruto quickly made his way to the Hokage's office. He was quickly let in. "Hey old man, there's something I have to tell you." Sarutobi smiled. Naruto was the only person in Konoha he knew that showed respect in such an offhand way. He'd call you old man when others would say Lord Hokage. Naruto opened his mouth to speak again, but Sarutobi lifted a hand indicating silence. He went through some hand seals and touched the wall, making the entire room take on a bluish tinge. He never noticed the red eyes directed his way as he performed the technique. Sarutobi turned back to Naruto, looking into his familiar blue smiling eyes. They had a mischievous glint that the old man had come to fear, always meant the blonde was up to something unpleasant. "I know about the symbiote, Naruto. I know about Venom." Naruto was utterly shocked. How? Sarutobi smiled. "I was there when the machine that brought Venom to this world arrived. I helped seal that glass vial up, though I didn't know about it until I saw the changes in you this morning. Let me guess, it's facilitating communication with Kyuubi." Naruto nodded dumbly. He shook his head in a theatrical, head-clearing gesture and smiled slyly. "I know something you don't know, old man." Sarutobi began to sweat. He didn't like that tone. What is that, Naruto?" Naruto smiled wide and channeled chakra. Sarutobi stared uncomprehending. When he figured out what he was seeing, he gasped. Naruto smiled wide, a big foxy grin. "But wait, there's more." In the classic showman's pitch, Sarutobi once again stared uncomprehending, then fainted as he was staring at the Mangekyo Sharingan. He knew it for what it was, as each one was said to be different in appearance. Sarutobi lifted his head of his desk and just stared at Naruto. The boy had the Sharingan and the ultimate level Sharingan to boot. How? Naruto smiled wide. He had the Hokage, stuttering. Venom can copy abilities from its host. A small part of Venom copied the Sharingan bloodline from Sasuke, and then with a little help from Kyuubi he activated it and upgraded it to its ultimate level. Sarutobi nodded dumbly. "Anything else?" Naruto nodded, grinning like a Cheshire cat. He whispered something under his breath and Sarutobi almost passed out again as he stared into a pair of white pupil-less eyes surrounded by protruding veins. "The Byakugan. The Hyuga will kill you if they find out you've got it." Naruto nodded. "But they'll kill themselves when they find out their clan head heiress gave me permission to copy hers." Sarutobi choked, then chuckled, and it turned into full-blown laughter. "Even though Hiashi will never find out who gave you it, I'd love to be there if he found out Hinata gave it to you." He finished wiping tears from his eyes. He sighed. "If that's all, Naruto. Good, now I bet you can't wait till you start missions with your team." Naruto snorted and glared at the third. "Old man, you know the missions we will be doing will only be D-rank. My clones read up on that in the library. I'm gonna send an overpowered shadow clone to work with my team, so I will still be learning about teamwork, though with a fangirl and an emo Avenger I doubt I'll learn much. Meanwhile I can train myself up." Sarutobi chuckled and dispelled the silencing privacy jutsu. Naruto stood and was almost out the door when he stopped and half turned towards Sarutobi. "Hey old man, there was a book in the library with a small message written in handwriting that looks just like the fourth's, since he has a book or two in there about shinobi life. It mentions a riddle. Those who wish to beat the dreaded and ancient enemy of all cages need to utilize their friends of shadow to help conquer a seemingly immortal foe." With a smile and a wave he left. Sarutobi thought it over again and again. Suddenly it hit him. The cage was busy working, signing piece of paper after paper, when he heard a distant shout of, "Son of a bitch." He looked around and dismissed it. Gaara had probably killed someone. Naruto chuckled as he heard the rather obvious sign that the third had figured out the riddle. As he left, he took a look in the Hokage's office window and saw 5 Sarutobis working at his desk while one lounged on a couch drinking sake and reading a little orange book. He chuckled as he headed off to train. Information for his raid on the library was slowly leaking into his mind. It started with the basics, and the first thing he truly absorbed was the face that good chakra control makes good shinobi, so that was what he did. The next day, Naruto smiled to himself. He was mastering chakra control exercises as well as increasing his already massive chakra reserves by doing these control exercises. He had set almost 300 clones including himself to tree climbing. He sat and dispelled the clones. He swayed as the information and experience impacted. He stood and walked calmly up the tree all the way to the top. He smiled as he reached the bottom. He made a further 200 clones, setting 100 to perfecting the tree climbing exercise. The other 100 followed the original to a nearby river and began to practice the water walking exercise. Several soaked to the bone hours later, and he had all his clones working on water walking, having perfected tree walking hours earlier. Naruto smiled as his clothes expelled all water in themselves onto the ground, leaving him almost totally dry. He staggered home utterly drained. He knew this would continue for a long while. 1 month later, Naruto smiled as he continued yet another chakra control exercise. He had the Hokage test him privately, and he had low Junin chakra control. He was currently contemplating what he had mastered in a month: tree walking, water walking, running, rolling and sitting. He also had mastered hanging onto solid objects like a roof or wall with all his different body parts. Head had been the hardest. The amount of times he fell on his face he couldn't count. Well, he couldn't really remember. He was currently balancing on the edge of a kunai buried handle first into the ground. After he finished this, he would move on to Senbon. The amount of times he had slipped and sliced open his finger were countless. He was lucky he didn't scar and healed fast. It was unfortunate that this type of chakra control exercise was impossible to do with clones. He could only do it himself. He did, however, have 200 clones doing an exercise he only did while bored, the kunai levitating exercise. He had each clone lifting 2 each, since he had nowhere near the amount of kunai needed in the clones. Kunai were not as heavy as real kunai. He had a further 400 clones, 600 in total, transform into kunai, which were heavier or lighter than they were supposed to be depending on the individual clone's choice. Naruto sighed and dismissed all clones and got of the kunai as he felt Hinata approach. He had seen the chakra sensing technique, but he didn't really need it with Venom in him. Naruto smiled as Hinata got into the gentle fist taijutsu stance, and he got into an identical one. At first he had copied it of her, but then he had snuck into the Hyuga compound and copied the entire style of 2 individuals he later came to identify as Neji and Hiashi. They never trained together and seemed to dislike each other, but watching both of them made it so he knew the entire technique. Naruto smiled. The Hokage had actually bought Naruto some sake, under the table of course, when he found out he had stole their style and was training Hinata with it. Also apparently only Kakashi had caught on to the reinforced clone going on D ranks, as he did the exact same thing. He had discovered this in the most peculiar way. He had almost been caught by Team 7 while on a D rank mission while he was buying groceries. He had dodged into a bookstore and come face to face with Kakashi. They both looked out the window and saw the team with the 2 clones. They looked back at each other and smiled, then chuckled. "I didn't see anything if you didn't," they said in unison, then chuckled again and went their separate ways. Naruto snapped out of his musings as 3 chakra points were closed on his chest, constricting his lungs. Hinata might not be able to see his points due to the symbiote, but he had made her read several medical books until she knew where they all were by memory. The symbiote nullified the Byakugan, but not the style that went with it. To his ire, this further contemplation caused even more chakra points to be closed. He dodged back a little, shocked at Hinata's smirking face. "What's the matter, Naruto? You're nowhere near top for today." He shook his head, signifying that nothing was really wrong, and they began to spar. To anyone watching who wasn't familiar, it would look like some sort of martial dance. To those of a trained or at least warrior's eye, they would see a graceful flowing battle without mercy between 2 opponents who weren't holding back. An hour later, Naruto sat next to a panting Hinata. He was thinking about the girl who was resting her head on his shoulder. They couldn't really clarify their relationship. They generally acted just as friends, with the occasional kiss and quite a few hugs. He smiled. He was happy, and in time they'd actually become boyfriend and girlfriend, but not just yet. He smiled as his clone dispelled itself in some secluded location. Then the info reached him. "Oh shit." Hinata got up, looking at him with a slightly worried, curious expression. They had grown close in a month of both getting to know each other and sparring. They would have been great teammates, able to tell what the other was thinking to an extent by simple shifts in facial expressions or body language, or even what the other was going to do, making fights against each other harder. "Oh, my clone was running out of time and I have to go to a meeting about the next mission," so he excused himself to go to the bathroom. "Created another clone, though temporary, till I get there. No time, got to go CYA Hinata-chan." With that he was gone. Hinata sighed. She had been hoping for a whole afternoon with Naruto, but she'd get that some other time. She smiled to herself as her hyperactive friend, semi-boyfriend, disappeared from the sight of her Byakugan. In the Hokage's office, Kakashi noticed that Naruto seemed pale and appeared to be sweating profusely. He saw Sakura and Sasuke casting glances in his direction. He suddenly gulped and said out loud, "Oh shit, Kakashi-sensei, tell boss I'm sorry." He disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving a flummoxed pair of teammates and a chuckling Kakashi and Hokage and a smiling Iruka who had just figured out what happened. What was that, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi looked up from his book as Sakura asked a question. Just wait a second and you'll find out. Sakura looked even more confused while Sasuke looked interested. Suddenly a knock on the window startled the genin. Kakashi walked over and opened it so Naruto could crawl in, smiling sheepishly. Naruto, I can't believe you ditched your team with a shadow clone so you could train, scolded Kakashi, earning shocked and angry looks from his teammates. Oh yeah, Kakashi-sensei, what about when I caught you in that bookstore and lo and behold I look out the window and there's my team with my shadow clone and another you. How do you explain that? Kakashi hung his head in shame. He thought he could browbeat Naruto without his own sneakiness being revealed. He was wrong. Sakura and Sasuke were glaring at the pair of wrongdoers while Sarutobi and Iruka were trying and failing to hold in chuckles. Naruto broke the tension by rubbing the back of his head, which was minus his hat. He ditched that accessory a while ago, just go in the way. My clone said this meeting was important, so what's up? Kakashi chuckled and looked at Sakura, who looked away blushing with embarrassment. Sakura told the Hokage off for giving us, how did she put it? Stupid lazy ass missions that old decrepit ninjas should do. Ah yes, that was it. Anyway, Lord Hokage said that he expected that outburst from you and that you'd say he is an old ninja. Sakura gained her senses before that happened. Anyway, he granted us AC rank. Naruto stared at him for a second, then at Sakura, who looked at the floor shuffling her feet, then at Naruto. What he said next surprised everyone. She'd be right, you are old and decrepit, not to mention perverted, you should do D ranks. Sakura stared at Naruto and smiled slightly, glad that he had supported her. She then berated herself. Naruto was just an idiot. Sasuke's, Kakashi's and Iruka's jaws hit the floor at his audacity. Sarutobi just stared at Naruto for a full 3 seconds, who stared back with a foxy grin. Then both of them started to roar with laughter, earning further incredulous looks from everyone else. Naruto eventually stopped laughing and looked up at Kakashi, who continued his explanation. Then after all that, the Hokage decided to give us a C rank escort mission. Cool, where's our client and when do we start? This question in itself surprised the people in the room. They'd expected him to bounce off the walls and shout about protecting princesses or something. Naruto snorted to himself. He like it ever do that. He thought he heard chuckling in his mind. What's so funny? All he heard in response was whistling. Sarutobi chuckled again and gave a signal to the attendant by the door, who let in their client. A tall, scruffy-looking man walked in holding a half-empty bottle of sake. The easiest way to describe him would be to say he looked like a bum. What the? These brats are what you're giving me. They look pathetic, especially the pink one and the one with a duck's ass for a hairstyle. The one in the coat looks alright. Naruto chuckled as he held Sakura back from murdering their client. Sasuke just glared. It didn't help that Kakashi was giggling into his book. Naruto finally got Sakura to calm down, while musing slightly that while she was an idiotic fangirl and kinda bitchy and abusive, she had felt nice when he pulled her against his chest. He dismissed it. He had Hinata and that's all he wanted or needed, or so he thought. At least Kyuubi had other ideas. He smiled as he was dismissed, quickly memorizing the few details of the mission and when to meet. He had an hour till then, so he figured he'd go find Hinata, tell her about the mission pack and be gone. Hinata was currently training in her variation of the gentle fist style, learning how to fight alongside Naruto, who was more of a freestyle brawler than a master of a specific art, had given her the fluidity in her moves to be able to use the gentle fist but be able to surprise her opponent by suddenly changing into something more aggressive and more powerful depending on your point of view. Her Byakugan was activated, and this was how she saw an excited Naruto approaching in a sprint towards her. She smiled. Naruto's abilities in stealth had increased so much she could only see him coming if he wanted her to. He soon skidded to a halt in front of her, almost bowling both of them over. Not that she would have cared. That would be nice, just lying here with him on top of me, while he starts to take off my bad Hinata, bad Hinata. She rubbed her nose, hoping to eliminate all evidence of her thoughts, but she failed. She blushed at the knowing look in Naruto's eyes as he smiled at her. She went crimson when he slowly looked down her body, then back up again. Naruto smiled as he watched Hinata try to curb her thoughts. He knew what she was thinking. He didn't need to see the nose bleed. The lust in her eyes was plain enough to see. Hey Hinata, I got something to tell ya that's kinda good, kinda bad. Hinata frowned. This was obviously by his posture something he liked but knew she wouldn't like. What is it, Naruto-kun? Naruto shuffled his feet for a second then sighed. I got a C rank mission, it's gonna take about a month. Hinata looked up. At first she was ecstatic that Naruto had gotten a mission that wasn't a D rank, though she was a little jealous that he got to go on said mission, the sad he'd be gone for a month. That's okay Naruto-kun, when do you leave? He smiled at her, obviously glad she wasn't angry even though he knew she wouldn't be. Tomorrow. Hinata nodded then suddenly glomped him, sending them both to the ground. Hinata giggled at his shocked expression, then before he could say anything kissed him. He didn't move or respond for a second then kissed her back. Wrapping his arms around her he deepened the kiss. They parted for air. Hinata laid her head down on his chest and sighed. She would miss this. During the academy she had been so shy, Naruto just talking to her would make her faint. Now just over a month later, she was lying in the middle of a training ground on top of him after kissing. She felt like, truth be told she didn't know what she felt like, but she loved it. She sighed when her brain had to remind her that they weren't actually boyfriend and girlfriend, more like, well, she didn't know she had heard some of the other girls talking about friends with benefits, and Shed asked her sensei Kurenai about it. Kurenai had blushed when asked and then giggled at Hinata's reaction to the explanation. Hinata had fainted. Hinata now supposed they were in the beginning stages of friends with benefits, sort of like being friends then good friends then best friends then close friends. Hinata suddenly realized something very important. She voiced her thoughts and Naruto to her surprise fainted. The next day, Sakura frowned. Naruto wasn't acting like himself. Then again he had been acting pretty weird lately ever since he activated his bloodline. He was currently staring into space, his expression constantly changing from a kind of dazed wonder to a concerned frown then back again. She heard him mutter, why did she have to say something like that? Sakura's curiosity got the better of her. Who said what? Naruto whipped his head towards her. He looked bewildered as if he hadn't known she was there. Don't worry about it, Sakura. Sakura frowned now. She was curious about Naruto. She turned as Sasuke arrived. She began her usual comforting routine of asking him out and talking to him about their mission, completely oblivious to the fact he was not talking to her and had a clearly annoyed expression. Kakashi soon arrived, only about half an hour late, after convincing his team that he was really Kakashi and not an imposter, which saved him from a painful death. They were on their way. Naruto yawned. Things were getting boring. He was currently practicing combining chakra sense with his venom or spider sense. It was giving him great detail, but he had to get them to work first. His spider sense showed danger while chakra sense showed life. Combining both of them was difficult but rewarding. His chakra sense went from a 10-meter radius to about 300 meters, but it also allowed him to gauge the size, strength and possible danger level to himself of all life within the sphere. This exercise was not physically tiring or very draining of chakra, but it was making his brain tired as it took a lot of concentration. He suddenly smiled, and looked over at the others. He had detected human life signs about feet meters ahead coming from apparently the road. They were stationary and defiantly shinobi, but not very powerful ones. He smiled. He knew they were there before the others, way before. Kakashi sensed them just as the puddle came into view. He noticed earlier that Naruto had been doing something with his chakra and had sent a small pulse of chakra that dissipated after about 10 meters, but afterwards he had stiffened and smiled and began to finger his kunai pouch. Kakashi didn't know how, but Naruto had sent out a chakra pulse of some sort that detected them. As the group passed the puddle, it disappeared, revealing two men with breathing masks and gauntlets connected by a spiked chain. They were about to attack Kakashi when Naruto shot a web at him and pulled him out of the way, either not knowing or not caring about his plan. Sakura went over the attack. It had been so sudden that she had frozen, but it ended just as quickly. Naruto had pulled Kakashi to safety, then his both of the enemy in the eyes with his webs and tied them up with his webs as well. When Kakashi asked why he used his webs, he said they give him an advantage only on surprised people, otherwise it could be dodged, cut up or simply broken if the person was strong enough. Kakashi had accepted this with a smile, saying something about the element of surprise as key to a ninja's survival. Sakura had been thankful that she hadn't had to fight, and also at the reassuring smile Naruto gave her, but now she was worried. Sasuke was glaring at Naruto's back. She had no idea what was wrong. Well, she did, but her infatuation was trying to beat back her rational mind and it was losing. Sasuke was jealous of Naruto's power and was intimidated by it. This, however, didn't fit in the fangirl's view of the world. Sasuke was a powerful genius prodigy ninja who was too shy to admit he was in love with said pink-haired fangirl. He couldn't be intimidated by the dead last of the class even if he did have some freaky spider-like bloodline. Sakura sighed as she failed yet again to get Sasuke to talk to her. This was going to be a long trip. Start flashback. Hinata just lay on top of Naruto and sighed. She looked up into his curious gaze and smiled deviously. Naruto was suddenly nervous. Hinata had only picked up that smile after they started to become something more than friends. And it usually meant something bad for him. He'd likely enjoy it, but it was still bad. You know Naruto, Hinata said as she lazily traced circles on his chest with her index finger sending shivers up his spine. If you can pass on the Sharingan and Byakugan like Venom said, then you could start your own clan. Do you know what this means? Naruto shook his head, indicating no. He started to sweat as the smile turned into a grin. It means you can have more than one wife. Hinata whispered into his ear. Naruto froze. This could either go really well or really bad, so he maintained a neutral look. And I wouldn't really mind, as long as I liked her, said the pale-eyed vixen. Naruto sighed. Hinata was slightly possessive of him, and he couldn't really see himself liking anyone else. But he had a sneaking suspicion he would be proved wrong. End flashback. Naruto got a warning just half a second before Kakashi yelled, "Get down." Instead of eating dirt like the others, he bent at the knees, his body parallel to the ground while everything below his knees remained upright and like Spidey does in Spider-Man 1. He noticed the shocked and odd looks on the faces of his teammates, including his sensei as he righted himself. He then noticed the large shirtless man standing on the sword that had been thrown. Just before he opened his mouth he noticed something else. What the hell, you eyebrowless freak? You coulda killed me, Naruto shrieked. Everyone, including said freak, sweat dropped at this statement. Kakashi sighed and rubbed his hidden eye. Naruto, that's what he was trying to do. Naruto whipped round as Kakashi finished the statement. At first, to everyone's surprise, he had a look of shock and disbelief on his face. It turned to a sheepish grin as he realized he was being stupid. Meanwhile, two beings were having a conversation inside Naruto. Can you believe that? Asked Venom disbelievingly. Kyuubi sighed. Yes, I can. That proverbial mask he's always wore makes him pretty dense sometimes. But thankfully, not very often. The two beings chuckled and turned back to the large, faintly glowing portal which showed them a Naruto eye view of the world. Naruto grimaced. He always got a tingly feeling in the back of his head when Venom and Kyuubi spoke. But just like him, they could block him out so he couldn't listen in. He tuned back into the world when Kakashi spoke. Momochi Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist, an S-rank Kurigaker Nukenin. Zabuza chuckled as Kakashi identified him. Ah, it's good to know that Sharingan Kakashi, the famous copy nin of Konoha, knows my name. Being known gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling in my chest before I kill my victim. I wonder who will pay the most for your head. Naruto shuddered slightly at the cheerful tone the man used, and he didn't think he was faking it. Kakashi uncovered his hidden eye, revealing his Sharingan, leaving Sasuke to wonder how he got it while explaining what it was to Sakura. Zabuza snorted and suddenly leapt away. He landed on the water and Naruto heard the gasps of his teammates who seemed to believe it was impossible to stand on water. Zabuza made a few hand signs. Naruto just managed to activate his Sharingan to copy the technique. Said technique was odd, but useful in both hiding yourself and scaring the enemy. The Kurigaker no Jutsu was particularly effective once Zabuza started to list the 8 different spots where he could kill someone in one blow while using the Utsusemi no Jutsu voice projection technique. He was also releasing killing intent. Most people could do this unconsciously when angry. Usually it just was a combination of the intent to kill, mixed with small amounts of everyday chakra. But when someone knew what it was and concentrated, they could unleash massive amounts of it, resulting in the following reactions. Naruto shivered slightly but shrugged it off, ultimately unaffected. Sakura started to shake and felt like running. But she looked at her teammates and regained her resolve though unable to move. Sasuke was shivering in fear, contemplating that suicide would get him out of this feeling. Tazuna was pale in the face. Kakashi looked over his shoulder at his team and smiled at Naruto's unaffected and reassuring smile. He observed Sasuke shivering, his hand twitching towards a kunai. Don't worry Sasuke, I'll protect you four with my life. He felt pride in the boy when he shook his head, and with difficulty, shrugged off the fear and concentrated on the situation at hand. Kakashi ran into the mist to fight the missing nin. Naruto waited, stretching and straining his senses. Kakashi didn't look around. It was pointless, he knew he had no hope of piercing this mist with his eyes, his other senses would do just fine. He suddenly sensed Zabuza going for Tazuna. He rushed to stop him but Naruto beat him to it. He severed Zabuza's spine with a kunai before the swordsman could strike. "Way to go Naruto!" yelled out Sakura. She was ecstatic. Their enemy was dead without any problems. But the joy died as Zabuza suddenly turned into water. He was a Mizu Bunshin. The real one's still out there. Naruto informed his fellow genin as he reassumed his position. "HN, how'd you figure it out dead last?" taunted Sasuke, his tone conveying anger but hiding his jealousy and envy at Naruto's apparently cool head. Naruto sneered. He didn't smell human. He smelt like water. Plus he didn't feel human. Sakura stared at Naruto for a few seconds, uncomprehending. But she shook her head and snapped out of it as she got back into formation. Sasuke on the other hand, well, he pulled a Sasuke. He glared at Naruto, jealousy of the blonde warring with his rage as well as envy. He only got back into formation when Naruto turned his back on him. Meanwhile, Kakashi was engaging Mizu Bunshin after Mizu Bunshin, trying to find the real one. Another clone abruptly appeared behind him. He couldn't react fast enough and was kicked out into the lake. Kakashi noticed just a fraction of a second too late that the water was too heavy. A call of "Suiden, Suiro no Jutsu" was heard through the mist. Naruto growled at what he saw when the fog cleared. Kakashi was trapped in what looked like a giant bubble. Kakashi saw that Naruto was about to move to assault his sword-wielding captor and yelled, "Run you three, take Tazuna and run. This guy is too strong for even all three of you. He'll kill you easily." Naruto looked at his teammates and was glad to see their resolve. "Kakashi-sensei, what kind of students would we be if we didn't listen to your advice? Remember, those who break the rules are trash. Those who abandon their friends are worse than trash." He quoted his sensei's words with a grim look on his face. Kakashi, if he wasn't surrounded by water, might have shed a tear. They, or at least one of them, had taken to heart the most important thing he could teach them. Naruto abruptly charged, but he was too slow apparently. Zabuza made a single hand seal and a Mizu Bunshin appeared. It made a scoffing noise as it swung its sword at Naruto. Naruto smirked and ducked low, evading the blow. The blonde then leapt into the air. Now leaving the ground deprives you of solid footing, a generally bad idea in any battle situation. Whether it be ninja, samurai or just a bar brawl, it's not smart. But if you can launch yourself into the air, then attach spider webs to your opponent and slingshot yourself at him, then it's a good idea. And Naruto did just that. Zabuza's eyes widened as the blonde boy appeared to catapult himself forward in midair and destroyed his clone with a crushing kick to the face. The kid's landing should have been hard. But he landed on all fours, seemingly unaffected by the speed he was traveling at. The kid once again launched himself at the real Zabuza and encountered another clone. He dispatched this one with a single thrown kunai almost lazily, and continued on. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a wicked-looking windmill shuriken. He unfolded it and threw it at Zabuza, while his teammates watched in awe and rage respectively. Zabuza laughed as he caught the shuriken, but he didn't see what Kakashi saw. Two thin slightly shiny strands of webs hanging of the shuriken. Kakashi grimaced. He hoped Naruto wasn't going to pull the same trick again, and he was correct in that assumption. Zabuza felt a tug on the shuriken and saw the webs. He quickly let go, chuckling about the one-trick pony that was facing him. Unfortunately, he was dead wrong. Naruto disconnected the web from his left hand and grabbed the other with both his hands. He pulled and twisted the single gossamer strand that was still attached to the shuriken around Olympic hammer throw. He turned on the ball of his left foot, doing a complete 360. The shuriken followed and gained surprising momentum. He released the shuriken and smirked knowingly. Zabuza's eyes widened as the shuriken was hurled at him faster than before. The brat had used his webs as a slingshot of a different type. He dived out of the way, releasing Kakashi from his watery prison at the same time. He didn't know it, but it was already over. Kakashi began to copy every single word and move Zabuza began to make. Not only did it begin to defeat him, but it freaked him the fuck out. I know it would to me. The next thing Zabuza knew was that he was in a lot of pain. He couldn't move his waterlogged body, and was pinned to a tree. He looked up and saw Kakashi approaching him, the single Sharingan eye blazing. Yes, I see your future, Zabuza, and your future is death. He raised his hand, preparing to strike. Zabuza heard a whistling sound in the trees and smiled before he was consumed in darkness. Kakashi's eyes widened as Senbon thudded into Zabuza's neck, apparently killing him. A hunter nin apparently female arrived and took Zabuza's body while thanking them. Kakashi's last thought before he slipped into unconsciousness was that the body should have been disposed of on sight. No one noticed the girl had been eyeing the blonde genin behind her mask, except for said genin, who got a slightly uneasy feeling of being watched by a hunter. Little did he know that Sasuke had got the exact same feeling all the time from Sakura. Naruto gasped as Kakashi fell over. He ran over to him, his sensei. He was swiftly able to determine that Kakashi had chakra exhaustion, and all he needed was lots of rest. He lifted Kakashi to his shoulder and followed Tazuna to his home. The next day, Naruto yawned as he sat up. When they had arrived, Kakashi had still been out of it, but Tazuna's daughter Tsunami had greeted them like they were family. Inari, Tsunami's son, had just told them they were going to die, and left. The team had been a little shocked at what the brat said, but had shrugged it off and settled down for the night. Naruto looked around, spotted his stuff in a corner. He leapt of the bed and grabbed his items. Said items consisted of his forehead protector and his kunai and shuriken holster. Venom quickly formed into his clothes, but Naruto decided on a change. He imagined a new set of clothes and Venom formed into them. They consisted of the same black boots and pants. A black t-shirt appeared, but the trench coat from before formed into a single ankle-length coat with a full-body zipper at the front and a hoodie. Organization 13 anyone. He smirked at his new appearance. Quickly coming up with an excuse, he pulled back the hoodie and walked downstairs. Naruto barely hid an outright laugh at his teammates' shocked expressions. What? I had more clothes sealed into a scroll. And no, I can't teach you how to do it since someone else sealed them for me. All I had was this coat anyways. His teammates bought it, to his satisfaction. He chuckled quietly to himself as he sat down, ate quickly, and asked Sakura if she would mind watching the house and Kakashi. He left, leaving several Kage Bunshin around the house hidden away just in case. He rushed into the woods, hiding himself when he felt Sasuke following. He only felt safe to train himself when Sasuke was no longer in the area. He already had a totally new method of chakra training. Even though he was low Chunin or high Chunin in control already, he wanted to be Kage or Sannin level before the next Chunin exams. He smiled to himself at the wonders of Kage Bunshin. He set to work. 300 on Senbon balancing, and 300 on kunai balancing, each only working with a single finger. Which finger was up to the individual Bunshin. Naruto himself did something simple and seemingly pointless. He practiced hand signs, increasing his overall speed with them even though he was mostly a taijutsu user. Once he had done that for an hour, he gave the clones more chakra to continue on, and began to work on something he'd heard of only in theory, seal-less jutsus. He was practicing with the one he used most often. This was Kage Bunshin. He'd last gotten a Bunshin that looked like it had been dead for days that lasted mere seconds. He was slowly improving. Once he got it right, he'd work on speed. Sasuke was pissed. He had hoped to follow Naruto to learn his secrets, but the loser had evaded him. He headed back to the house and ignored Sakura, heading up to his room to think. Naruto came back to the house, having apparently skipped lunch. In reality, he had caught it, killed it, cooked and ate it. He'd never had rabbit before. He ate enormously at dinner, telling his teammates that he had just been training all day. He then went to bed. Naruto woke the next day, feeling quite refreshed. Kakashi was apparently up, and planning on supervising their training. They swiftly ate breakfast and headed out. Kakashi smiled as he told them what they would be doing. Your exercise today is going to be climbing trees. Kakashi explained. He paused for their moment of righteous indignation, and explained further. Without your hands, he added, and I smiled at their responses, but was surprised to see Naruto look bored out of his mind. Well Naruto, since you're so bored, why don't you go first? Kakashi asked. Naruto just shrugged nonchalantly and walked up the tree with no apparent problems. Kakashi's eye widened. He had been about to call the boy out for using his bloodline, but he could see he was using chakra to stick to the tree. Unfortunately, Sasuke wasn't as observant. Hey Dobi, stop using your bloodline to show off. He called up the tree. Sakura had noticed what Naruto was really doing, and was unsure if she should correct her Sasuke-kun or not. Kakashi intervened by explaining. Naruto is using chakra to do the exercise. What others do you know, Naruto? Naruto smiled and listed them in a distant tone that basically said, "You're wasting my time, sensei." Tree climbing, water walking and running, Senbon balancing, and kunai balancing. I am currently working on an entirely new exercise. You wanna see it, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, jittering eagerly. Kakashi's jaw dropped at the list. The kid had to have low Junin level chakra control. He grinned a second later. This new one sounded interesting. Maybe later, Naruto. Sakura, Sasuke, I want you to keep running up and down the tree for practice. He gave Sakura and Sasuke a kunai to mark their progress, and watched them attempt to run up the tree once before ambling off. Naruto walked away a short distance, hid himself, and watched. Sakura ran up the tree perfectly the very first try. Hey Sasuke-kun, I did it on my first try. Isn't that great? The pink-haired bint squealed. Sasuke just ignored her and continued the exercise. Sakura ran back down the tree, and then up again. She watched as Sasuke made it up a distance and then fell back, having obvious difficulty with the exercise. Sakura stayed down the bottom of her tree as Sasuke tried once again. He landed at the bottom and glared at the tree as if it was its fault he was failing. She approached the fuming Uchiha with a mild blush and her hands clasped behind her back. Sasuke-kun, she tentatively asked, avoiding meeting Sasuke's gaze. What is it now, Sakura? The Uchiha huffed out, annoyance and impatience evident in his tone. I was wondering if you'd like my help, she timidly asked, trailing off and quieting. Sasuke turned towards her, and for a second her hopes were raised. But then they were dashed by the fierce glare sent her way by Sasuke. I don't need your help, Sasuke spat. His voice held such venom that Sakura took a step back in fear. What came next utterly crushed her. You're pathetic, Sakura. The only reason your control is so high is because your chakra reserves are incredibly small. That and your book smarts are the only things going for you. Otherwise, you are slow, weak, and utterly disgusting. I will never go out with you, even if my life depended on it. So stop asking me on dates all the time. Just leave me the fuck alone. You're beneath me. Even if you weren't weak and annoying, you'd still be a commoner. I deserve someone far better than you shallow bitch. Sasuke snarled. He took a breath and continued to glare and rant at the stunned and hurt pink-haired Kunoichi. You're nothing but hindrances to this team. So piss off and drown yourself for all I fucking care. Sasuke whispered spitefully. Sakura took a few seconds to absorb all this. She looked at Sasuke's face and saw only contempt as he turned away and tried to climb the tree again. Tears began to stream down her face as her heart shattered as she ran. Naruto grimaced. That had been harsh. Before he went, he stealthily cast a small Kaden jutsu and set the Uchiha's hair on fire. He trailed Sakura, leaving behind a fuming Uchiha behind. Said Avenger knew even more than before that he had a hairstyle resembling a chicken's ass, as the entire back part of his head except for the hairs that stick up had completely burned away. Sakura eventually came to a stop, not really being able to run anymore. She just sat down and cried great heaving sobs of the broken-hearted. She flinched and cried out when she felt a pair of warm arms wrap around her. She struggled at first, but froze when a familiar voice attempted to soothe her. Shish, I'm here for you, Sakura. At first, the only thing that registered was the comfort and caring the embrace produced. She managed to place the voice as Naruto's. The embrace shifted. Instead of holding her from behind, he slipped around in front of her. She looked up into his whiskered face. Her first thought was an odd one. He has beautiful eyes, and then the events of the last few minutes came rushing back to her mental eye. She buried her head in the crook of his neck, and sobbed her heart out. Naruto had always had a soft spot for crying women. He hated it when they cried, and he always did his best to comfort them. This was when a woman actually wanted to be comforted by him, so he didn't entirely know what to do. He had comforted Hinata a few times after her father had verbally abused her. He guessed this was the same thing. He just held Sakura until she ran out of tears. She finally cried herself out, but stayed where she was. She said something, but it was muffled in his shirt and neck. He pulled back a little, and looked into her eyes, which were red and swollen from crying. "What did you say, Sakura?" Naruto asked her while tilting his head to the side and arching an eyebrow, making him look extremely cute. "Why are you here for me, Naruto? You must have heard what Sasuke said to me, right?" Sakura managed to choke out, wiping one of her eyes. "Yeah, I did. What he said was wrong," Naruto answered, stroking her silky hair gently. "Then why are you here?" She was beginning to tear up again, thinking he was going to leave her alone. "Because I think he's wrong." He saw her shock and smiled a little. "Yeah, you can be a little moody." "Well, actually you can be a little bitchy sometimes," he admitted, and frowned when a few tears escaped her eyes. "You have bad taste in men," Naruto continued. Sakura hung her head, beginning to cry again. "But you didn't deserve that. You're nothing of what he said. I'm not gonna say anything corny like he doesn't deserve you, even though it's true." She looked up at him again, smiling slightly. Naruto's face lit up when he saw her smile. "Prove the bastard wrong, Sakura. Become strong. Sasuke was right when he said you were weak, but that doesn't mean you can't become a whole lot stronger. And you know why he thinks you're a hindrance." He frowned at a mumbled, "I'm weak. No, it's because," he looked around shiftily, gaining her attention, "Bakashu, he wants to be alone on this team with me and Kakashi-sensei. No girls if you get me." He smiled in triumph when she giggled slightly. "Frankly, I know I always do my best when there's a beautiful girl around," Naruto softly admitted to her. She smiled again, and blushed crimson when he softly cupped her face with both hands and wiped away her tears with his thumbs. He gently kissed her forehead, which made her go into an even deeper red. "Now come on. I'll teach you some stuff that Tem over there won't learn for ages." He stood up and held out his hand. Sakura took it slowly, noticing how warm it was. Her inner self was strangely quiet since Sasuke's attack. She followed him while blushing the whole time. But she was also slightly disappointed as he was holding her hand, but it didn't seem to register with him. "Okay, this is the technique I'm going to teach you." Naruto demonstrated this technique by walking out onto the water. A couple steps out, he turned back to the shore. "Okay, Sakura, this is basically the same as the tree climbing exercise, but it needs more control and constant flow of chakra." He grinned at her mildly shocked expression. "Since you have very little chakra, and I doubt you want to get wet, go one step at a time and I'll catch you if you fall." Sakura nodded, trying not to blush at the last part as she gathered her chakra and placed one foot on the water. Once she was sure she had it right, she put the other foot on the water. She wobbled, but stabilized quite quickly. She had done it, and on her first try no less. Sakura pumped her fist in the air, but lost her concentration, and stopped the flow of chakra to her feet. Sakura cried in fright as she fell forward, but two arms wrapped around her waist and pulled her upright. She clutched onto the arms as they pulled her against something very warm. Sakura took a few seconds to realize that it was Naruto she was clinging to. And for the past few seconds since she had been caught, she had been greatly admiring the chest and the arm muscles she could feel. She felt the hands loosen slightly, and her grip tightened. Naruto noticed, and tried to console her. "It's okay, Sakura, I've got you. Now try again, we don't want you falling in again," Naruto joked. Sakura nodded, her face a bright crimson as she concentrated again. This time neither on the hands now supporting her at the waist, nor on the seemingly chiseled chest she was being held against. She managed to find her footing on the water, and turned around to face a smiling Naruto. Unfortunately her inner self kicked in and started to talk about trying to get his shirt off and feeling his chest up. She lost it again. Sakura fell forward, only to be caught again. She held onto his arms and righted herself, only this time her face was mere centimeters away from his. Naruto was a little stunned. Not that she'd fallen again, not about how close she was, but mostly about how good she felt in his arms. She felt as good in his arms as Hinata. The thing about sharing him that she had said came back to haunt him at this very moment. Unfortunately, Sakura lost control of her inner self for just a half second. The inner self, now partially in control of motor functions, moved Sakura's head forward about half an inch, causing their lips to meet. Naruto's eyes widened. She's kissing me. Sakura's eyes widened. I'm kissing him. Ah, fuck it, was Naruto's last thought as he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer. His eyes drifted shut and his lips began to move in a soft, tender kiss. Sakura's eyes widened even further when he pulled her closer, closed his eyes and began to kiss her instead of just having their lips touching. Respond already, girl, you can slap him later. Her inner self nodded inside her mind, and began to kiss him back. Kakashi's visible and covered eyes widened. Hot damn, that was unexpected. Well, maybe not after what Sasuke said. Such a fool, he thought as the two teens kissed. He had really been hoping to see that technique Naruto had talked about. He frowned quickly. He could have sworn for a split second Naruto's coat shifted, and a demonic-looking face appeared to stare at him. He shrugged it off and watched as they continued kissing. I wonder how far they'll go, no. Bad Kakashi. Bad Kakashi. He slapped himself and pulled out his book, bad idea. Naruto broke the tender kiss and took a couple of breaths. He stared at Sakura. Her eyes were still closed and her face was the same color as her hair. Her eyes opened and they stared at each other for a few seconds. Wow, he heard her whisper and couldn't contain his smile. That good, huh? Sakura heard him say through the haze. She felt heat rush to her cheeks, and looked down as she nodded, not wanting to look him in the face. Her first kiss might not have been with who she imagined, but it was all she had imagined it to be. How? She asked as she looked up into his facing, obviously wondering why he was so good. She was a little shocked to see a fleeting glimpse of shame of his face, then slight confusion and fear, then a gleam of hope. Somehow her woman's intuition told her exactly what was going on. You have someone already, don't you? She stated. He nodded his head and looked down, but he didn't let her go. Hinata. He whispered so quietly that she almost didn't catch it. What are we gonna do? We could just drop this. I guess something between friends. She offered half-heartedly. She didn't voice it, but she didn't like this idea. To her surprise he looked at her and shook his head with a small smile. Well, the thing is, Hinata likes you. Doesn't like you going after the Uchiha, but she's always admired your confidence and brains, something she's always believed she lacks even though she doesn't. And well, she kinda once said. He paused, not sure how to go on. Sakura frowned. She said what? Little did she know that Kakashi was now listening in, and had a slightly perverted idea about what she had said. She said that she would be willing to share me with other girls as long as she liked them. He sighed, waiting for the inevitable slap or scream. None came, however, and he looked at Sakura, who was staring at him suspiciously. She really said that? Sakura breathed softly, her emerald eyes wide. He nodded while looking her in the eyes. I guess I can talk to her about it when we get back. We'll find out what to do then, but nothing until then, Naruto. She warned him with a dangerous glare. He nodded vigorously, wanting to avoid a potential beating at all costs. He helped her for a few more minutes, then went a few feet away and sat on the lake. Neither of them heard the perverted giggle that came from the red-faced Kakashi. Oh Naruto, I'm so proud of you, he thought with a snicker. Kakashi righted himself, and put his book away as Naruto began to concentrate. Even Sakura stopped and sat as he prepared himself. He began to gather chakra, and quite a considerable amount, too. A lot more chakra than Sakura had total. The chakra formed itself into a bubble around him, even pushing the water a watt from underneath him. Naruto floated slightly inside the bubble. The bubble of chakra grew bright at the top where more chakra was being gathered. The bubble began to slowly descend into the water, eventually being totally enveloped except for a slight glow. The bubble of chakra and Naruto were gone for an entire minute. He suddenly surfaced and the bubble was gone. He stood on top of the water and walked to the bank. He flopped down on the ground next to Sakura, who was utterly speechless. Kakashi stared, and stared, and stared. The technique was original all right. But he kinda suspected only people with genin-level chakra reserves and control could pull it off with any hope of it working for them, and then it would be very draining. Naruto smiled at Sakura's stunned face. After a minute, she spoke. Wow, that was so cool, was really the only thing she could say. Naruto nodded slowly, but burst her bubble abruptly. Unfortunately, only someone with genin-level reserves and control or higher could do it. I wonder what Kakashi thinks. He trailed off in thought. Sakura raised a single eyebrow in question. Oh, I think he was here the entire time. I only sensed him after I did the exercise, because he lost concentration and allowed himself to be sensed. Sakura stated. She immediately went pale, and then blushed furiously. Kakashi saw none of this as he leapt into the clearing to talk to Naruto. He received a fist to the face and a kick to the groin from an irate pink-haired kunoichi. Naruto's eyes widened and he instinctively covered his best friends, and felt the customary sympathy pain. Don't ya just hate that, fellas? Even happens when we see it done to someone we don't like, that all males feel. Well, maybe not Sasuke. Kakashi barely heard through his pain as he clutched his dangly bits. Sakura say, if you ever tell anyone what you saw or heard, I'll give you a spontaneous sex change operation, you lech. Kakashi nodded his head vigorously as pain tears streamed down his face. Naruto got up, not really feeling sorry for his down sensei. Sakura chose that second to say something that made him shake in his boots. Same goes for you, if you tell anyone except Hinata. She seethed. Naruto nodded his head and followed her back to the house like a dog on a leash. He suddenly voiced a question that had been bugging him for a little bit. Hey Sakura, I've been meaning to ask, why did you not slap me back when I kissed you? He asked, tilting his head cutely. Sakura sighed and looked at him out of the corner of her eye. Well, when you helped me out and held me when I was upset, I kinda realized what a great guy you are, Naruto-kun. Naruto stumbled for a second. She had actually complimented him. And what was better, she had added the kun suffix to his name. Well, Sakura, I guess I should tell you a secret now since Hinata knows already. I don't really have a bloodline trait. Sakura's head snapped round and she stopped walking. Then how? She didn't really need to finish the question. Naruto frowned, thinking of the best way to tell her. Well, you see these clothes I'm wearing, they're not really clothes. He explained. Sakura's eyebrows disappeared beyond her bangs at this little tidbit of information. There is a living creature called Venom who lives inside of me and does a whole lot of beneficial things for me. Sakura nodded slowly, indicating he go on. Sakura sat down on the ground utterly stunned. That Venom creature made him a lot stronger, a lot faster, taller, more muscular, gave him 2 stolen bloodlines and webs. Who knows what else it could do? Oh, and there's 4 levels to it. Sakura threw him yet another questioning glance as he explained the symbiote's traits. Yeah, level 1 is when Venom is inside me, not mimicking my clothes. This level just makes me faster and stronger than I should be. Level 2 is with the clothes. It's the same deal but even better. Level 3 is almost the full suit. He's shown her the battle face, which gives me extreme attributes such as being able to lift 5 tons. Level 4 gives me maximum attributes such as being able to lift up to 15 tons, and move as fast as Kakashi-sensei. But since I have next to no battle experience or taijutsu style, it isn't very helpful. Naruto admitted. Sakura nodded understandingly. She was grateful when Naruto simply sat next to her, letting her adjust to it all. He hasn't told either of the girls about Kyuubi yet, afraid they'll hate him. Paranoid bastard. Sakura had a lot to accept today. Firstly, Naruto was far stronger than Sasuke. Secondly, Sasuke was a self-obsessed asshole that was hell-bent on revenge. Thirdly, she now liked Naruto. And lastly, he had some sort of parasitical creature living inside him. She sighed. She still liked him and she was tired from using so much of her small chakra reserves today. She unintentionally fell against Naruto's shoulder and fell asleep. Naruto smiled. He picked up Sakura bridal style, and took her to Tezuna's house. He then went off to train again. Several hours later, a girl of about 14 years wandered through the woods picking herbs when she came across an unusual sight. A boy, only about a year younger than her, was lying passed out in the shade of a tree in nothing but a pair of shorts. She walked over to check on him, when she recognized him, the young ninja who had hurt Zabuza. She reached forward, about to kill him despite how good he looked right now, when something happened. Inside Naruto's mind, Venom and Kyuubi whispered quietly while Naruto slept, his consciousness shut off from them while he was asleep. But still, they still didn't want to risk him waking up. "What the hell are you doing, Kyuubi? That chick's gonna kill him. All you're doing is forcing him into a deeper sleep, and sending out a shitload of those pheromones that he got from you. Listen, Fuzzy, if you're not gonna do anything, I will." Kyuubi chuckled sinisterly, causing Venom to pause, confused. "Just wait and watch, Venom. If she attacks, then defend him. But just wait, I'm sorta doing the kid a favor." Kyuubi trailed off and began to chuckle madly. Venom got suspicious of the perverted tone in the Kyuubi's chuckle as they watched the girl's next move. A lecherous, toothy grin crept onto the parasite's face as he realized what Kyuubi was planning. She sighed, still not entirely sure what made her do something like that to someone. She didn't know, but she had a feeling, if you will, that told her she would do that again, but only to this boy. She had never done anything like that before. Ever. As pure as snow, Zabuza had once told her. She wiped her face one last time, making sure everything was in order as she shook him awake. He woke quickly to her amazement, as he had gone through all she had done to him and hadn't woken. Utterly amazing. Inside Naruto's mind, he, I told you I was doing him a favor. Kyuubi grinned lecherously as he watched Venom chuckle like a certain perverted, white-haired Sannin. "Kyuubi," Venom began while shaking his head, large red tongue swaying like a pendulum. "You were one sick, perverted son of a bitch. Damn straight," the giant fox roared. Venom just laughed harder. Outside, Naruto woke up from a really weird dream. He had dreamt he was a straw in someone's drink. He was shaken awake by an incredibly beautiful girl with a slightly flushed-looking face. For a split second, he thought he had died and gone to heaven. Unfortunately, his mouth moved faster than his brain. "Are you an angel?" he murmured, before he clamped his jaws shut. The girl blushed and looked away to hide it. "And no. Are you okay? Why are you sleeping out here in your shorts? You could catch a cold or something." Naruto looked confused for a second, then smacked his head. Before he really thought about it, he called upon Venom and he was suddenly dressed. He, see, I'm fine. Shit. That's supposed to be a secret. He saw the girl's confused and slightly frightened look. "My clothes are part of me," he explained. She nodded slowly, still looking a little wary. "Oh, by the way, what's your name?" Naruto asked her suddenly. She looked surprised and blushed profusely. For a split second, he thought she looked at his crotch and licked her lips. She quickly looked back up at his face. "My name is Haku," she introduced herself. Naruto smiled warmly and held out his hand, looking for a handshake. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." Haku took his hand and shook it gently, blushing still. She forcibly reminded Naruto of Hinata. "Why did you ask if I was an angel, Naruto?" He blushed as she dropped the bomb, and looked away. "Well, I kinda thought I'd died and you look like an angel," he stammered. He blushed and looked away. Naruto froze when he felt a pair of warm lips upon his cheek. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," the blushing girl whispered as he froze. Another one, he thought. He smiled as he helped Haku gather some healing herbs. The two of them talked about how he was a ninja and how he wanted to protect his precious people. They continued talking until finally, Naruto dropped his own bomb. "So Haku, how's Zabuza doing?" he asked as casually as someone commenting on the weather. Haku looked at him in fear and started to reach for a hidden weapon. "Don't worry, I'm not going to reveal you or hurt you." "I couldn't do that. You're a friend." Haku looked both relieved and a little frightened at this, so he continued. "As for how I know, you smell just like that Oinin hunter nin that took Zabuza out. I can also smell Zabuza on you, although it's quite faint." She nodded slowly and smiled at him shyly. "So, why did you mention it?" she asked slowly. He looked at her searchingly, apparently gauging her trustworthiness. He answered a moment later. "Because I've read about Gato, and he's as corrupt and evil as he is short and arrogant. That means he will probably betray you, and I figured you might be able to convince Zabuza that you could join us in Konoha. The Hokage is basically my surrogate grandfather, so I should be able to convince him to let you two become part of Konoha," Naruto told the beautiful girl. Haku looked like she was about to cry in joy, but she shook it off and nodded furiously. "I will try," she whispered to him. She bent down and kissed him on the cheek, which had both of them blushing, and she left at a considerably fast pace. Naruto laid back down for a few minutes, and got a small daydream running of her going down on him that was disturbingly realistic. He dismissed it quickly. He already had enough problems with Sakura realizing she had liked him, and Hinata wanting to confirm their status as boyfriend and girlfriend. He got up and headed back to Tezuna's house. The next morning Naruto woke up and groaned. First, he had been berated by Sakura for spending all night in the forest. His crotch had felt funny, kind of lighter than usual all morning. Third, he had avoided Sasuke, who seemed to want to learn how he was so strong. All he ended up doing was light sparring with Sakura to help her improve her taijutsu style. Naruto also started her on an exercise schedule that he designed. The schedule was designed to increase her overall speed and stamina quickly, without straining herself too much. Then he had to restrain himself from physically harming Inari, who said they were all going to die. He had also had the same dream of being a straw, and now Sakura wasn't looking at him anymore and kept wiping at her chin for some reason. Kakashi seemed to know what was going on, as he giggled even when he didn't have his book out. Naruto was currently sparring with Sakura out in the woods. She had been improving quite a bit lately. They both seemed to be on even ground until he called for a halt. "Okay, I think that's enough for now. Let's rest for a little bit." He was nowhere near tired, but he was exerting himself more than he had before. Sakura was a fast learner after all. She flopped down on the ground and just sprawled out, panting heavily. He lay down next to her, not really breathing hard but not really wanting to continue as Sasuke was in the area. Sakura curled up next to him to rest. He began to once again ponder the weird things that were happening to him. He was having dreams of being a straw, or being sucked through a straw, he wasn't sure. Sucked through a straw, I've heard that before. Wait, nah, yeah. Those Ika books, but what could that mean? The dreams aren't dirty, but a guy had a dream like that in book 6 and it was because, no way, Okami-sama, Sakura and that Haku girl in the forest must have, damn it, they could have waited till I was awake. He mentally screamed. Inside his head, Kyuubi and Venom were laughing their asses off. The entire time he had been running through this thought process, Sakura had been watching his face, which changed emotions alarmingly quickly. They went from confusion, to a thoughtful frown, then panic, then surprise, and now anger. "Naruto-kun, is something wrong?" she asked curiously. He looked at her a little surprised, as if he'd forgotten she was there. He quickly blushed crimson and muttered quietly, "I've been having weird dreams lately where I was a straw in someone's drink." This was of course a calculated response, but Sakura didn't know that. Her jaw dropped and she blushed beet red as she made the connection. She tried to talk but it only came out as a splutter. Sakura looked at his face, then down to his crotch, and a small trail of red left her nose. Naruto narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "Sakura, did you do something to me while I was asleep?" he asked as he gazed at her. Sakura sat up and looked like she was about to bolt, but he managed to grab her shoulders before she got up and ran. He pulled her back down, looking her right in the eyes. "You did, didn't you?" he whispered, genuine shock on his face. She looked at the ground and nodded her head. His answer shocked her more than a Chidori 1000 birds. "Why didn't you wake me up? I missed out, and all I got was some weird dream." Sakura looked at him in shock, then grinned sheepishly and whispered, "Next time." Naruto gave a very happy, obviously perverted, grin and settled back on the grass. "How did you figure it out, Naruto?" she asked curiously. He looked around warily, and grinned sheepishly as he scratched at the back of his head. "Well, I've kind of read the Ika books Kakashi-sensei reads. Wait, before you beat me up, I've got to explain something. Cage bunchins are special in more than one way. Not only are they solid and intelligent, they can learn things, and stuff they learn gets transferred to me when they're dispelled. And I had a whole bunch of them at the library to learn all about chakra control, history, and stuff like that. I guess some of them read the Ika books and I got the info, so that's how I know." Naruto explained. Sakura gave him a skeptical, disbelieving look. Okay. Prove it. Make a cage bunshin and get it to follow me. She instructed. Naruto did so, and the bunshin followed her. A few minutes later, she came back minus the bunshin. Well, what did I do? She asked him, with her hands on her hips. Naruto looked at her and blushed furiously. You flashed the clone. He told her. Sakura's jaw dropped. She hadn't really believed him, and thus had felt safe flashing the clone, even though she had sucked him off last night while he was sleeping. She blushed and found it difficult to look him in the eyes again. Looks like we both got something to look forward to, eh? He asked her. She looked at him in alarm and fainted. He chuckled to himself as he lifted her up, carried her back to Tezuna's house and put her in her designated bed. He then went to train once again. This time was different however. When Sasuke tried to follow him, he tied him up with webs and made his getaway. When he was a few miles from the house, he pulled out the Venom suit, and quickly learned its drawbacks. While making him more powerful, he became more aggressive and sadistic. Where he would normally knock someone out quickly, he'd beat them to a pulp while using the symbiote's power. Where he would temporarily disable a person normally, he would permanently cripple them while in the Venom suit. He sighed glumly. He would have to use this form against enemies, only not in sparring. Kakashi had been watching Naruto training Sakura. It was interesting. Sakura's taijutsu technique was textbook academy style. Absolutely flawless, yet also almost useless. Sasuke had the Uchiha style of taijutsu down almost perfectly, but Naruto was a bit of a mystery. He was a brawler. His style of fighting was fluid and random. There were no set stances. It was mostly attack, then attack again, and repeat. It was essentially a useless style for most shinobi, but shinobi like Naruto who used it to perfection almost made it a taijutsu style in itself. Completely adaptable, completely unpredictable, and absolutely the worst kind of taijutsu style for a Sharingan user to face. He sighed. Even if he told Sasuke, which he had admittedly tried to, the arrogant little shit believed that just because he was an Uchiha he could beat anyone eventually by copying their jutsus. However, that wouldn't work against Naruto. Kakashi hadn't mentioned it, but he had noticed that not only did Naruto have incredibly physical speed and strength, his clothes somehow blocked the Sharingan from copying his moves. He sighed again. Naruto was evasive and good at it too. Sasuke had been tailing him in the hopes of learning something, but each time he had either gotten lost and been found and brought back by Kakashi, or tied up in a complex and ingenious trap that took him several hours to get out of. Kakashi supposed that life as a prankster had taught him good trap making and stealth skills. It was easy to see who else, but a damn stealthy son of a bitch could have painted the Hokage monument in broad daylight. He sighed again and went to find Sasuke, who had no doubt been tied up by now. Naruto sat down, a little winded. He'd trained in taijutsu with his clones, and trained chakra control for a bit. And at the moment, he was utterly stumped on what to do. Fortunately, Venom helped him out. While still holding back massive amounts of the information gleaned from the library raid, he did leak in lots of low-level techniques and kept on leaking them. Naruto naturally felt this happening and smiled inwardly. Thanking Venom, he got to work. He created several hundred cage bunshins to practice different techniques while he sat and did a rather simple yet hard task. The simple part was the idea seal-less jutsu. He could make cage bunshins with some concentration and thought. It only took about 5 seconds now, but he still couldn't do it in a split second. Those 5 seconds could cost him his life. He also figured if he got this simple jutsu like Kawarimi and Henge, fighting would be a snap. He practiced, and practiced, and practiced some more. It was only when he was nearly collapsing from exhaustion that he got it down. He managed to drag himself back to Tezuna's place in time for dinner. He sat down, looking utterly exhausted. It didn't really help that Sakura was smirking into her plate as her foot glided up and down his thigh, sitting opposite him obviously. She, however, didn't get the desired reaction. He was simply too tired. However, luck wasn't with him and a demon had decided to fuck up his life. Its name was Inari. "Why do you train so hard? You're just all going to die," Inari stated. His tone was angry, but you could almost see the desperation and pain coming of the kid in waves. Naruto smirked. "Yeah, whatever kid. I'm not going to go out like that until I achieve my dreams. Naruto answered calmly. Inari looked at him, the corners of his eyes were becoming moist. Soon the tears would flow. What do you know of pain, you idiot? What do you know of suffering? Inari ranted. He was about to continue, but almost fell of his chair as Naruto, who had been lounging back and looking up at the ceiling with his hands behind his head, snapped forward and slammed his hands into the table with a snarl. Not the normal human kind of snarl which is a warning but still kind of pathetic. This was a deep, menacing, feral snarl. In a word, monstrous. What do I know of suffering? The Konoha shinobi blinked as Naruto's voice deepened, and for a split second, seemed to have another voice overlapping it. You know nothing of my pain, kid. You had parents, and you still have them. I've had no one. Until recently, I've been alone my whole fucking life. He seemed to get control of himself as his voice lost its growling quality but was replaced by a deep, cold, calm that had Inari shaking even more than the growl. You're pathetic, you runt. I've suffered more pain than you can imagine, all for something I couldn't control. And you know what? Did I turn out like you, a sniveling little brat? No, I didn't. I picked myself up. I stopped crying, I became strong, and I found a reason to be strong. And if you still think I'm an idiot and that I'm going to die, you can go fuck yourself. And with that he stood up, and walked up the stairs to his room. Inari stared at where Naruto had been for almost 20 seconds before he broke down crying and ran to his room. The others sat stunned. The silence was broken by Tazuna, who asked in a quiet subdued voice. Is it true what he said? Kakashi sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Yes, it's true. Naruto has been through things that would drive adults mad. It's incredible that he's still sane. It's utterly amazing that he's turned out to be the person that he is, so forgiving and caring. Unfortunately, this has also led him to despise people who wallow in their own suffering and believe they are the only ones who've suffered, as you can see. Kakashi explained. Tazuna sighed, and held his head in his hands while both Sakura and Tsunami cried quietly. That's just the tip of the iceberg. All heads snapped towards Kakashi. When the Kyuubi died, many people had so much hate and grief unspent with nowhere to go. And Naruto was born that day, shortly after the fox had died, and he had those whisker-like birthmarks. That was enough. He became the village scapegoat. They tried to have him killed multiple times. Kakashi looked down at his plate to avoid the horrified looks. Not even the Hokage rightly knows how many times people have tried to kill Naruto, villagers and shinobi alike. He heals at a phenomenal rate. Minor wounds take seconds to heal. He would survive anything not immediately fatal without so much as a scar. However, this gift is a curse, just one more piece of evidence that he is the Kyuubi for the villagers. All I know for sure is that he's been living by himself since he was 6. Kakashi paused to inhale. He was kicked out of the orphanage when most orphans are given homes of their own at age 12. I do however know he was almost killed 5 times in his first month of life. Tsunami and Sakura were now openly sobbing, and Tazuna had tears leaking out of his eyes. Sasuke however just sat and stared straight ahead, paler than usual, a look of utter shock on his face. There have been people looking after him, and there are those that tried to help him. I myself tried to adopt him, but by the time I knew of his plight he was 8 and liked living on his own. That boy knows strength. He is truly strong to suffer so much and come out with a smile, ready to protect a village which has shunned him all his life. No one else I know could have done it. With that said, Kakashi stood and went outside, leaving 4 very shocked people behind. Sakura did the only thing she could. She got up and ran to Naruto's room. Naruto was very shocked to see a sobbing Sakura throw open the door, rush in, tackle him to his bed, and start crying into his chest. He comforted the crying girl as best he could by hugging her, stroking her back, kissing her hair and forehead, the works. He knew he would get his answers soon. She finally stopped crying but didn't move. Sakura-chan, why were you crying? Sakura looked at him and this seemed to bring fresh tears to her eyes. Kakashi-sensei told us SAA about how the villagers think you're the KK Kyuubi, even though it's dead. Sakura choked out. She started to cry again, not noticing the fear in Naruto's eyes. She had to know. Sakura, he said sharply, bringing her head up, Sensei didn't tell you the whole truth. She looked confused and even more concerned. The Kyuubi never died. No mortal man could kill it. What the Yondaime did was seal it away. Naruto swallowed at her fearful look. He sealed it in me. That's why the villagers hate me. Sakura stared at him for so long, he thought she was going to run. But just when he was about to start crying, she kissed him. The kiss didn't deepen into anything passionate, it was just a sweet, tender, comforting kiss. When they broke up, Naruto uttered a single sentence that made Sakura kiss him again, "Thank you for not hating me." The couple kissed for a while but eventually settled down, and fell asleep in each other's arms. The next day, Kakashi limped slightly while following Tazuna, a brooding Uchiha and a glaring Sakura followed behind him. Teasing Sakura about finding her sleeping on top of Naruto had seemed like fun at the time. He wasn't entirely sure how she moved fast enough to get close to him, but he caught her before she kicked him in the nuts. She then stamped on his foot, distracting him, and then kicked him in the nuts. And then she slugged him in the face, blackening his one visible eye. Naruto had been left behind, still sleeping like a log due to exhaustion. Kakashi looked up from his musings. A mist had started to roll in. "Aw crap," he thought. Naruto woke up to a scream. He was still dressed, though it was rumpled from not only being slept in but slept on. He sat bolt upright and heard another scream. He was gone in a flash. Inari was crying, but he stood defiant as he rushed forward to save his mother. But just before the thug's blades fell, the blades were yanked away and Naruto arrived. Unfortunately, the thugs pulled out small combat knives. Naruto pulled 2 kunai out and threw them by simple reflex. The thugs were dead before they knew what hit them, the knives drawing blood from their throats. Inari stared in the vision, but was soon hidden from him by his mother while Naruto burned their bodies with a simple Kaden jutsu. He looked over at Inari and made his decision. "Inari, you did good. I'm sorry for what I said yesterday. You were brave. You saved your mother. Your father would be proud of you." Inari started to tear up, but he wiped his eyes and nodded at Naruto, who simply nodded back and was gone in a blink. At the bridge, Kakashi was a little freaked out. He knew Zabuza and the Oinen were in the mist somewhere, but they hadn't attacked or revealed themselves yet. They seemed to be waiting for someone. They didn't have to wait long. Kakashi sighed as Naruto arrived and skidded to a stop. To his surprise, a voice rang out of the mist. "'Bout time you got here, Runt. I'm here to see if your offer is for real." Kakashi's eyes widened, as he had uncovered his Sharingan. What offer would this be, Naruto? Kakashi asked, looking at his blonde student. Naruto had the destiny to look ashamed. "Sorry Kakashi-sensei, but I kind of made an offer with Haku over there that I could talk to the Hokage to see if they could join Konoha. And obviously they're interested, or Haku is very persuasive." He smiled sheepishly and turned to Zabuza. "Yeah, I guess it is for real. And if you can't be accepted, I know for sure that the Hokage will let you have safe passage outside of Fire Country, but he will accept Haku for sure, since she isn't actually a missing nin." Naruto explained. Zabuza nodded, clearly expecting this. He lifted the mist, but froze when he heard a familiar voice call out. Well, Zabuza, it's so sad that you betrayed me. But since I was going to kill you anyways, it doesn't matter too much," said a snide voice. The group turned and saw a short, fat, rather disgusting man surrounded by at least 200 thugs. Zabuza narrowed his eyes dangerously. "Gato," he snarled, gripping his huge cleaver tighter. The thugs laughed, obviously underestimating the ninja. "Hey Zabuza, Kakashi-sensei, what we gonna do about these guys?" asked Naruto as he fingered a kunai in an almost loving manner. "Hey Zabuza, you're some demon. I'm gonna have you killed, then I'm gonna have some fun with that little whore of yours before I give her to my men," Gato taunted confidently. Zabuza growled and was about to charge when Naruto appeared in front of him. "They're mine." The voice and tone the kid used was a little frightening. It was so cold and calm, yet held a hidden malice barely being contained. Zabuza's, Kakashi's and Haku's eyes widened when Naruto made a single hand sign, and a light mist appeared. The first thing the three noticed was that it nearly blocked their sight. Kakashi yelled out for Sasuke and Sakura to protect the bridge builder, while they left the mist to help Naruto. However, he didn't need help. They left the mist and froze in shock. Naruto was no longer in sight, but something was attacking the thugs. The creature was black all over, except for a demonic-looking spider on the back. It turned towards them, and Kakashi gasped. Zabuza barely held in one, and Haku cried out in terror. The beast had large, white slanted eyes, and a huge smiling mouth filled with enormous, razor-sharp teeth. A long tongue protruded between its jaws, waving back and forth. It appeared to be salivating heavily. The demonic spider design was repeated on the front of the creature. The beast seemed to smile at them before it once again used its claws to tear apart an enemy. Haku had begun to suspect this creature was Naruto, while Kakashi and Zabuza thought it was some weird summon. Soon after all the screams and war cries ended, all that was left was Gato and the creature. The creature grabbed Gato, and gestured for them to approach. They did so. When they were within 10 feet, the beast's face seemed to melt, revealing Naruto's face beneath it. "What the fuck?" was Zabuza's fitting question. Naruto smiled at them, the black substance covering his skin reverting to his original clothes. "I'll explain in a second. I've got to do something first." He turned to Gato and whispered something that had Kakashi and Zabuza quaking in their boots, or ninja sandals. "Mangekyo Sharingan." Gato looked into Naruto's eyes and he whispered something else. "Tsukuyomi." Gato began to scream, and then he fainted. Naruto merely lifted him and threw him over the side of the bridge to drown. Okay. I repeat, what the fuck?" Zabuza said again. Naruto for a moment turned, burning Sharingan eyes with a spider web pattern in them on the people watching him. He blinked and they were gone. "Well, the creature you saw is part of me. It is a symbiotic life form that lives inside of me. In fact, my clothes are made out of it. The symbiote makes me stronger, faster, the whole deal. It also does a lot of other things too." And with that, he quickly explained everything that he knew about Venom, Kyuubi, and about how he upgraded the Sharingan. This obviously left Kakashi and Zabuza dumbfounded at the kind of power Naruto had, and answered a whole host of questions. Meanwhile, Haku was just watching Naruto and smiling dreamily. The two Junin disposed of the bodies, and walked back to the other three they left behind through the clearing mist. The other three were talking to the villagers who had arrived a bit too late. Kakashi explained that he, Zabuza, and Naruto had taken care of Gato and his men. They soon walked back to Tazuna's house while Zabuza and Haku went with Naruto to take all they could from Gato's base of operations. Naruto smiled as he sealed millions of Ryu into several scrolls. He separated the scrolls into even piles, and gave one pile to Zabuza, one to Haku, one to himself, and one for the people of Wave Country. They soon collected all the money and their possessions from their own base, and met Kakashi and the rest of Team 7 on the road back to Konoha. Naruto had sent a buncheon with the Wave share of the money to Tazuna. The now bigger group walked along, with scattered conversation. Sakura was currently getting to know Haku. "So what made you decide to come to Konoha?" she asked the older girl. Haku thought about her answer before sighing. "Well, I became a ninja for Zabuza-san, but I don't like hurting or deceiving or doing sneaky dishonest things to others, so I want to become an Iryunin medical ninja," Haku answered. Naruto looked over at her and snorted loudly. This coming from a girl who sucks guys off in their sleep. He blurted out. Everyone froze at this, and Haku looked down at the ground blushing maroon. A yell from Sakura broke the awkward silence. "You too," the pink-haired girl yelled. Haku looked up in shock. Sakura looked at the others' faces. Naruto was chuckling to himself while Sasuke looked utterly shocked. Kakashi seemed to be smiling and fingering his back pouch. Zabuza was shaking his head. "I knew it was a bad thing when Haku started reading Ika Ika Paradise," he muttered, pinching his nose and shaking his head. Haku blushed again and looked down, but looked up again as Naruto put a hand around both hers and Sakura's waists, smiling at them both. Meanwhile, Kakashi had started to talk to Zabuza about their favorite book series. "I love scene 6 in book 7 where those three girls are going down on Zaku and how there's one on each." They trailed off as they realized the two girls were glaring at them, while Naruto was slowly backing away, Sasuke following him. "Oh shit," they said in unison. Zabuza ran like a bat out of hell. Kakashi, not knowing how dangerous Haku was, stayed put and gave an eye smile. Naruto was running for his life, Sasuke beside him when a terror and pain-filled scream echoed through the forest, followed by a ripping sound. The two boys looked at each other, gulped, and ran faster. Naruto sighed after consoling Kakashi, who insisted on a funeral for his book. Somehow, both Zabuza and Kakashi ended up wearing funeral clothes, which came out of nowhere as the book was covered over by Sasuke. After saying a prayer, the group got moving again, and soon the gates of Konoha were in sight. To be continued. Remember to subscribe and like this video.